Immortal Cultivation family, starting with extreme effort to gain experience. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326, Mutual Restraint. The bodies of Lu Yat and the other two suddenly sank down, and Subin's face even turned slightly red. At the moment when the golden light covered his body, he felt that the flying boat that was originally as light as a feather was now like a mountain, which made his mana consumption doubled. Oh no, it's really a unyielding cultivator. Subin's face changed slightly. Lu Yat was about to implement the second plan that the three of them had discussed, that is, the plan for the three of them to use their own life-saving items to escape from this place. Suddenly, something unexpected happened in the field, and a rumbling thunder sounded. In front of a gathering place for cultivators, black and gold arcs of electricity broke out from the body of the cultivator in the front, and they intertwined and collided with each other, condensing into a huge thunderball, and the thunderbolts sounded without giving into each other, and even the space was faintly rippled, with an extremely shocking momentum. The huge face on the sky suddenly focused its eyes, and instantly gave up the move of swallowing the three people, and turned to the black and gold two-color entangled thunderball, and a huge roar broke out from its huge mouth. The roar condensed into substance, turning into tangible ripples and heading straight for the black and gold lightning ball. At the same time, the huge black and gold lightning ball suddenly broke away from the grasp, with a stream of tail flame, heading straight for the huge face. At the same time, there was an extremely cold voice, "Humph, fellow Taoist Li, don't you think your appetite is too big?" In the horrified eyes of everyone, the sound waves emitted by the giant mouth collided with a black and gold lightning ball in midair. A great fear of life and death instantly filled everyone's heart, and many people showed despair. However, the next moment, the other three unyielding cultivators took decisive action and gathered all the destructive aftermath generated by the collision between the two that was enough to kill the giant and cultivator, and also save the cultivators of many forces at the scene from the disaster. When the giant mouth turned around, Lu Yat and the other two suddenly found that the pressure on their bodies had disappeared. Subin's magic power was surging, and he took the opportunity to control the flying boat to rush into the sky again. "Still want to run? Come back to me." A cold laugh sounded, and the first to recover was the leader of the immovable alliance, Zhu. He just lightly drew a line in the air with one hand, and several golden lights suddenly appeared under the flying boat, and quickly formed a square that just surrounded the flying boat. Boom! The flying boat had no time to stop, and suddenly crashed into the golden light, making a dull sound. It's the prison on the ground. The leader's method of trapping the enemy, the monks of the immovable alliance cheered. Seeing that the prison on the ground trapped the three people, a trace of expectation flashed across the thin face of the leader Zhu, and then he stretched out his palm and clenched it hard, as if he was holding an invisible rope in his hand, and the flying boat immediately flew backwards to his position. "Old Zhu, you are dreaming." The speed of the flying boat flying backwards was extremely fast. When this voice sounded, the distance between Lu Yat and others and old Zhu was less than half. At this moment, a shocking sword intent burst out from the flying boat, and then everyone saw a white light like a swimming fish flying towards the invisible rope, and in an instant, it chopped thousands of times, forcibly cutting off the invisible entanglement. The speed of the flying boat suddenly stopped, and a layer of dark blue water curtain suddenly appeared in front of Lu Yat, and the water curtain was attached to the golden light formed by the prison on the ground. In just a blink of an eye, the golden light above their heads had been corroded by half. "Go!" Lu Yat shouted in a low voice, and then the flying boat rushed out of the gap in the corroded place like an arrow from a string. Such a quick reaction and means of breaking the deadlock made the several unyielding cultivators here a little surprised. However, this surprise only appeared for a short moment. The next moment, they turned their attention back to the three people, or the peerless Taorim the Carrot. That meant the existence of the path of transformation, and they had no choice but to pay attention. "Damn it, you unyielding cultivators are so shameless to deal with the three of us Jinden Juniors, and what's more shameless is that you actually joined forces, which is simply embarrassing for all unyielding cultivators. When I form a baby one day, I will definitely come to your door one by one and have a good talk with you about what happened today." The frivolous and arrogant scolding came from the flying boat, and the five unyieldings didn't feel anything when they heard it. After all, Each of them was an old monster who had lived for at least 500 years, and their face had been trained to the extreme. To use Liu Ya's words in his previous life, it was Schrödinger's face. This thing is dispensable. When the benefits are big enough, then they can have no face at all. If there is no benefit, they are the most sanctimonious seniors. However, although the 5 Yuanings didn't feel anything, there were quite a few people in the various forces with strange eyes, and they faintly agreed with what the man on the flying boat said. However, everyone knew what was going on, so no one fought back or spoke out against Su Bin's ridicule and scolding. They chose to remain silent in tacit agreement. Although they didn't feel anything, it would be detrimental to their dignity if they let him shout like this and had people from their own forces watching. So, several Yuanings started to get serious without saying anything. On the one hand, they wanted to take down the 3 people, and on the other hand, they wanted to prevent others from taking down the 3 people. The back and forth gave Liu Ya and the other 2 some breathing space. Liu Ya and Zhang Daoyin continued to resolve various attacks and trapping methods, while Su Bin manipulated the flying boat to move left and right in the air, but he could not escape this range. However, his scolding never stopped, resounding above everyone's heads. As they scolded, the faces of the 5 Yuanings became darker and darker. Liu Yankan silently began to transmit his voice to Alliance Leader Zhu. After a few breaths, Alliance Leader Zhu's eyes flashed with a gleam of light, and he agreed with Liu Yankan's suggestion. The flying boat escaped the siege again. When it was about to break out of the siege, Liu Yankan swung his sleeves, and nearly 10 streams of light with powerful spiritual fluctuations rushed towards the other 3 Yuanings and the flying boat flying in the air like a fairy scattering flowers. At the same time, Alliance Leader Zhu moved and rushed towards the flying boat. Liu Yankan, are you crazy? President Liu, why do you have to make wedding clothes for others? Stay here. 3 shouts rang out at the same time, but Liu Yankan and Alliance Leader Zhu were unintentional. Even if they reacted at the first time, it was still too late. They could only watch Alliance Leader Zhu appear above the flying boat and hit the flying boat under Liu Ya and the other 2 with a palm. The huge force made Su Bin's face pale, and he couldn't control his mouth full of blood. He vomited out a wow sound, and the Kingayu flying boat even made a whine and turned into a stream of light and drilled into Su Bin's sleeves. The 3 people's greatest reliance on flying was broken in an instant. The next moment, they saw Alliance Leader Zhu looking at them grimly, with his skinny hands reaching down towards the 3 people. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 327 Escape failed. The cultivation of the perfect nascent soul was released without reservation at this moment, and the huge pressure seemed to be pressed on Liu Ya and the other 2. Even though Liu Ya and the other 2 were all true cultivators who had formed the Dan early, they had no room for resistance in the face of such a huge gap in strength. 2 Taoist brothers, let's meet later. Facing the fully cultivated Alliance Master Zhu, and being hit by his attack, Su Bin's face turned pale and he was the first to collapse. Before he finished speaking, a piece of white jade hanging on his waist suddenly shone brightly, and the milky white halo enveloped him at an unstoppable speed. Want to leave? Alliance Master Zhu showed a sneer on his thin face. Since he had already made a full effort, he would not let anyone get away. Who knows who has the peerless Dao Yun in his hands? If any of the 3 of them got away, his chance of obtaining the peerless Dao Yun would drop from 100% to 50%. He didn't dare to gamble, nor was he willing to gamble, and he would not gamble. So, Alliance Leader Zhu's consciousness was firmly locked on the 3 people, and the huge mana filled the void. In an instant, the Yuaning domain that belonged to Alliance Leader Zhu covered a radius of 100 feet with him as the center. It was not that it could not cover farther. If he exerted his Yuaning domain with all his strength, it could cover a radius of more than 1,000 feet. However, at this moment, there were still 4 other Yuanings beside him, so Alliance Leader Zhu had to be on guard. In the ice-blue Yuaning domain, the temperature dropped sharply, and even the void made a crackling sound as if it was about to be frozen. The ice-blue domain enveloped the 3 people. Just when Alliance Leader Zhu thought that the space had been sealed and they could not escape, the milky white halo had completely enveloped Su Bin. The next moment, the light was bright, and strange fluctuations burst out from the halo. When the halo disappeared, Su Bin's figure was no longer in the ice blue. Old Ghost Zhu, what on earth are you doing? The matter was almost certain, but suddenly such an unexpected change occurred. Liu Yankan, who was facing the 3 Yuanings alone, could not help but roar. He was so angry that he even made some mistakes in controlling the magic weapon. Several attacks passed through the gaps in his defense and hid Alliance leader Zhu. Old Ghost Zhu did not expect that the level of the life-saving item of this Jinden Jr. was so high that it could even break through the blockade set up by a unyielding perfection cultivator like him. This kind of high-level life-saving item that can break through the blockade of unyielding cultivators is not something that ordinary cultivators can easily obtain. At least, only the most outstanding disciples of ordinary forces can have such a life-saving item. The other party can use it so easily, and his identity and background are worthy of Alliance leader Zhu's careful consideration. In addition to regret, a trace of fear also emerged from the bottom of Old Ghost Zhu's heart, and the look he looked at Lu Yat and the others was no longer indifferent and calm as before. After all, the weakest person among the three had such a high-level life-saving item. He would never believe that the two who were weaker than him did not have it. However, once the arrow is shot, there is no turning back. As long as he obtains the Peerless Daoyin and uses it to break through the nascent soul, then everything is worth it. With this thought, Alliance leader Zhu did not hesitate at all and thoroughly displayed the horror of the nascent soul perfection cultivator in front of Lu Yat and the others. When Su Bin activated the life-saving item, neither Lu Yan or Zhang Daoyin continued to insist. A treasure scroll jumped out of Lu Yat's storage ring and was about to be fully activated in the next moment. Zhang Daoyin, who stood side by side with him, also had a jade sword-shaped treasure activated at this moment, and a sharp light was emanating from it. Just when the two were about to escape from this place, two extremely cold auras attacked them. At the moment of contact, both Lu Ya's teleportation talisman and Zhang Daoying's sword-shaped treasure lost their luster in an instant. Lu Yu felt as if his consciousness was frozen by ice, and his thoughts were moving very slowly. Even the mighty and surging mana in his body became slow at this moment, and he could not mobilize it at will. Just a ray of cold air, whether it was Lu Ya or Zhang Daoying, they were frozen on the spot. Lu Ya's heart was awed, and then the three-colored lotus outside his soul suddenly bloomed with light. Wherever the light reached, the feeling of being frozen also began to loosen, and the movement of his thoughts became flexible again. As soon as he thought about it, the golden-red domineering flame ignited from his body surface, and the terrifying temperature caused the temperature within a few feet of his body to rise sharply. Lu Yu felt that the mana in his body was no longer condensed, and immediately instinctively, he pinched his fingers with one hand, and the swift wind escape was performed in an instant. His figure was swept by the strong wind, and in a flash he came to Zhang Daoying's side. He grabbed Zhang Daoying and performed the swift wind escape again. The two figures flashed and disappeared from the spot. Zhu Laoga narrowed his protruding eyes slightly, feeling the fluctuations in his own domain, and sneered, "The escape technique is indeed good. If it were someone else, you might have really escaped." Then Zhu Laoga took a step forward, and a nice blue light emerged from the soles of his feet. His figure seemed to be slowed down countless times by time, and a series of afterimages appeared behind him. In just a moment, he appeared 100 feet away. The wind was howling, and Lu Ya and Zhang Daoying emerged at the edge of the domain. The moment he appeared, Lu Ya's face changed. In front of the two of them, the skinny unyielding cultivator was looking at them sinisterly. "I am not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. As long as the two of you hand over the Peerless Daoyin to me, I promise to let you two have a way out. What do you think?" Zhu Laoga showed a smile that he thought was pleasant, but the murderous intent emanating from his body was firmly locked on Lu Yat and the other two. As long as Lu Yat and the other two had the slightest thought of refusing, he would kill them without hesitation. Although the storage ring was difficult to open, there was no way to do it. At most, he could find a master who could break the rules to break it. Lu Ya's body was imprisoned, but his mind was turning rapidly, trying to find a ray of hope. However, Zhu Laoga did not give the two too much time, because at this moment, the other three unyielding cultivators who were stopped by Liu Yankun had broken through the blockade and were forcing his domain to suppress them with their own domains. "Don't want to? Then die. If you die, the Peerless Daoyin will still be mine." Zhu Laoga's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and then his spiritual consciousness moved, and his magic power and murderous intent condensed into a pair of huge palms, and he slapped Lu Ya and Zhang Daoying mercilessly. If this slap was real, Lu Ya and Zhang Daoying would be annihilated in an instant, and they would die. Just when the spiritual palm was about to come, a slight cough sounded like thunder, ringing in the ears of everyone present. Chapter 328, The Power of the God. The cough was not loud, but the strange thing was that after being heard, it was like a sea tide, one wave higher than the other, and finally turned into a surging and terrifying huge wave that resounded in the minds of all cultivators. The higher the cultivation level, the more terrifying the huge waves they felt. Among them, the sound heard by Zuleoga in front of Luyur was the loudest and most terrifying. In Zuleoga's mind, the cough had now turned into a huge wave of hundreds of meters, constantly hitting the soul defense he had built. The dull roar like thunder shook his soul and made him unstable, and even his mana showed signs of being out of control. How is it possible? How is it possible? Just a cold snort, and I have no power to fight back. Incarnation. It must be a great incarnation. Why would a great incarnation come here? Could it be that he also came for the peerless Tarim? Zuleoga was guessing endlessly in his heart. As time went by, he had no time to think about it, because the huge waves were getting higher and more terrifying. The defense he had set up was already in danger. His heart was full of fear. He felt as if he was a small boat, floating and sinking under the vast power of the sea. It was very likely that he would be completely hit into the seabed in the next wave and would never float to the surface again. Senior, spare my life. Under the huge threat of life and death, Zuleoga no longer cared about the face of the leader of a faction and the unyielding great monk, and shouted loudly. With this shout, the endless huge waves in his mind suddenly disappeared, as if everything he had experienced before was just an illusion. Zuleoga's eyes bulged out, and he looked at the familiar sky and the two Jindan juniors in front of him with lingering fear. In the distance, several unyielding monks who rushed over looked at him as if they had seen a ghost. Zuleoga naturally heard the plea for mercy he had just made, and thought that it was because of this that they attracted such attention. However, when he glanced at the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw a figure standing quietly beside him. Zuleoga was shocked. In his consciousness, he did not find anyone beside him, but in his eyes, there was an old man with white hair and beard standing beside him so naturally, looking at him with old eyes from time to time. With his mind racing, he hurriedly bowed and said, Junior Zukong, I am honored to meet you, Senior. If I offend you unintentionally, please punish me. After saying that, he maintained the posture of bowing, and the corner of his eyes was just staring at the linen shoes in front of him. It was unknown how long it took, so long that Zuleoga felt that the sight falling on him was getting heavier and heavier, almost breaking his spine, and then the sight suddenly disappeared. He felt relieved, knowing that he had escaped this disaster, so he began to get up slowly, and then he saw a scene that made him feel cold in his heart. He saw that the unfathomable old man with white hair and beard was looking at the two young people in front of him with a smile. When Luya saw the white-haired old man, he knew that the crisis had been resolved, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa, why are you here? Zhang Daoying asked with a smile, his handsome face full of smiles. Ahem, Grandpa has something important to do, and happened to pass by here. I sensed your aura, little Daoying, and missed you a little, so I came to see our Daoying on the way. In the shocked eyes of Zuleoga and other unyielding cultivators, the white-haired old man with the lowest level of transformation of spirits smiled kindly at this moment and looked at the golden elixir youth holding the sword. Grandpa, you have worked hard, Daoying. Thank you for your concern. Zhang Daoying did not doubt him and bowed respectfully. The old man in white laughed and turned his eyes to look at Lu Yang. His old eyes seemed to contain the power to see through everything. Lu Yang asked himself if he had a clear conscience. After looking at him, he bowed respectfully and said, Junior Wang Tang, I am honored to meet you. Zhang Daoying also said, Grandpa, Brother Wang is a friend I met, and Brother Su Bin, but he has just moved away. If you want to see him, you can only wait until we meet up, so you are my friend. Not bad. The old man in white stroked his beard and looked at Lu Yan with a little satisfaction. I came in a hurry and didn't prepare any suitable gift. This is a little thing I got by chance in my early years. Just treat it as a gift. As he said that, Zhang Daoying's grandfather flashed in front of him, and a piece of glittering and crystal clear ore appeared in front of them. Lu Yu didn't even need to take it in his hand. Just by sensing the pure energy contained in the ore in front of him, he knew that it was a rare and precious material. Senior, this thing is too valuable. I am not worthy of it. The white-bearded old man waved his hand casually and said, since you are Xiao Daoying's friend, you don't need to call me senior. If you don't mind, you can call me Grandpa together with Xiao Daoying. Okay, Grandpa is really the best. Zhang Daoying seemed quite happy. Seeing this, Lu Ya did not insist, but respectfully bowed again. After hearing Lu Ya's grandpa, the old man was obviously very happy. He pushed the piece of ore into Lu Ya's arms and said with a smile, "Since you call me Grandpa, this little thing is not very suitable. You keep it for now. When you go home with Xiao Daoying to play, Grandpa will give you some good things as a gift." Lu Ya was quite flattered and subconsciously wanted to refuse, but before he could say anything, he was blocked by Grandpa Jiang's words. "Don't refuse. I know you young people don't want to interact with old men like us, but it's okay to meet them occasionally." Seeing this, Lu Ya nodded solemnly and put the ore into the storage ring. "Thank you, Grandpa. Okay, we're done here. If you have something to do, go ahead. I'll take care of it here." Grandpa Jiang waved his hand and signaled the two to leave first. Seeing this, Lu Ya understood, so he and Zhang Daoying bid farewell to Grandpa Jiang and flew away from here on the rainbow light. Grandpa Jiang watched the two people leave, and his originally kind face gradually restrained. There was no trace of kindness between his eyebrows and eyes. He looked at the several nascent souls present with an expressionless face. At the same time, a breath wave that surpassed a nascent soul rose from his body, imprisoning everyone present in place, unable to move. Haha, maybe it's because I, Wulian Heir, haven't been out for too long, so now any demons and monsters can touch my direct disciple at will. As soon as the four words Wulian Heir came out, the 5 Yuanying and dozens of Jinden present were pale. And some couldn't control their bodies and began to tremble. "Senior, please spare our lives, we don't want to kill anyone, let alone Wulian Heir's Xianjiao disciple. We are blind. Please spare our lives, everyone, remember to vote." Chapter 329 Conversation. Lu Ya and Zhang Daoying drove the escape light towards Wangcheng. As for the final fate of the Yuanying forces behind them, after the transformation monk Zhang Laoi made a move, it had nothing to do with them. In the rainbow light, Lu Ya's face was calm, thinking quietly in his heart. This time, the trip to the ruins was not too long, but the danger was quite high, and the harvest was quite rich. In addition to the black-silver needle-type Daoyan items that Lu Ya obtained at the beginning, after joining Zhang Daoying and Su Bin later, the three of them acted together. Lu Ya, as the main force, also got 3 Daoyan items. However, among these Daoyan, only one was barely useful to him, and as for the other 2, they were useless to him and could only be used. However, Lu Ya's finger of extermination broke through to the Yuanying in the ruins, involving the laws of the Great Dao, which was an unexpected surprise. In addition, there were some magic weapons and storage bags and other storage tools obtained in the ruins from fighting with those Jinden Foundation building monks. Compared to his own gains, the wealth in these storage bags is real. Lu Ya has harvested more than 10 magic weapons alone. Although these magic weapons have been slightly damaged due to the battle, they can be repaired and used. Whether it is sold as a second-hand magic weapon or repaired and kept for a family members to use, it is a good choice. In addition, there are a lot of spiritual stones and materials. Lu Ya is too lazy to count them one by one. He puts them into his storage ring and piles them in one place, forming a small mountain. However, if we talk about the person who has gained the most from this trip to the ruins, it has to be Zhang Daoying beside Lu Ya. The Dao rhyme contained in that blade wheel can really be called peerless. In addition, Zhang Daoying is a sword cultivator and is known for killing. The killing intent on the blade wheel also perfectly fits Zhang Daoying's path. When it is safe, Zhang Daoying will begin to comprehend this Dao rhyme from time to time. His strength will definitely usher in a period of rapid growth. Thinking of this, Lu Ya turned his head and looked at Zhang Daoying with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Zhang Daoying is not only extremely talented, but also has an old master in the god transformation stage. Both his talent and background are quite terrifying. If it were an ordinary person, if he had one of these two qualities, he would probably be unable to help but feel arrogant. But Zhang Daoying gave Lu Ya the feeling of a young man who was not very experienced in the world. He was smart but had no thoughts. Lu Ya often looked at Zhang Daoying's eyes and could clearly understand what clear stupidity meant. I came out for a trip and found a master in the god transformation stage. If I tell people about this, I don't know how many people will envy me. Lu Ya recalled the amiable attitude and smiling face of the old master Zhang before, and couldn't help shaking his head. People become smart as they grow old, let alone this cultivator who has lived for hundreds or thousands of years. Lu Ya would not think that just because he was Zhang Daoying's friend, he could be treated equally by the god transformation cultivator and be called grandpa. Moreover, except for Zhang Daoying, no one present would believe what the old master said to Zhang Daoying. What about going to deal with important matters and just passing by here, are all fake. The real situation is that old Master Zhang has been guarding Zhang Daoying and acting as a protector. However, Zhang Daoying didn't know about this, and Lu Yan naturally wouldn't deliberately expose the truth. But there is one thing Lu Yan can be sure of, that is, old Master Zhang has no bad intentions towards him. According to Lu Yan's own estimation, at most, when he faced the attack of the nascent soul cultivator, the means he showed were no worse than Zhang Daoying's, so he thought that his talent and strength would not be weak, so he let Lu Yan be his great-grandson. The ultimate goal is to make a good relationship. Brother Wang, I have to thank you this time. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I would have fallen into the hands of that nascent soul. While flying, Zhang Daoying suddenly came to Lu Yan's side and thanked him with a serious look. Lu Yan waved his hand, just a few trivial matters. Then, he looked up at the blue sky, and said slowly, compared to this, Wang is quite curious about which sect Brother Zhang is from. Zhang Daoying hesitated when he heard this, but after thinking for a while, he seemed to have made up his mind and said, before I went out, both the grandfather and other elders carefully told me that it would be best not to reveal my identity and to keep a low profile. But I think that Brother Wang is a person worthy of close friendship, so I don't want to hide it from you. This is really not too secret news. After Zhang Daoying finished speaking, he tidied his robes and straightened his crown. After making sure that everything was appropriate, he bowed to Lu Yan and said slowly, Wulian Heir, the direct disciple Zhang Daoying, greets fellow Taoist Wang Teng. He turned out to be Wulian Heir's direct disciple. Wulian Heir, one of the 5 major sects in the world of cultivation, has powerful cultivators who have passed the tribulation or even reached the Mahayana ascension stage. Their strength is unrivaled in the entire world of cultivation. Zhang Daoying is actually the direct disciple of Wulian Heir, and his talent are enough to be proven. For such a genius, it is not a waste of talent to have a divine transformation cultivator as a protector. After Zhang Daoying finished speaking word by word, Lu Yan also bowed and said in return, I am a country cultivator, I am honored to meet you, Brother Zhang. Zhang Daoying replied in a flustered manner, Brother Wang, you are too polite. Lu Yan did not hesitate anymore, but just asked, Wulian Heir is not close to here, why did Brother Zhang travel such a long way to the junction of the 3 domains? Faced with this question, Zhang Daoying smiled and did not answer Lu Yan directly. Seeing this, Lu Yan naturally did not intend to continue asking. The two flew for a long time and finally arrived at the location agreed with Su Bin before. At this moment, in that cave, Su Bin was closing his eyes to regulate his breath. The stagnation in his breath was gradually dissipated during the process. After sensing the breath of Lu Yan and the others, Su Bin slowly opened his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. With a wave of his hand, an invisible protective shield quickly dissipated, exposing his breath to the perception of Lu Yan and the others. Sensing Su Bin's breath, Lu Yan and Zhang Daoying quickly flew into the cave and saw Su Bin sitting cross-legged on the ground. Su Daoyao, how do you feel? Zhang Daoying asked with concern. After all, his life-saving magic weapon, the flying boat, was hit back to its original form. Both of them saw it. The magic weapon and the cultivator are connected to each other's life. If the magic weapon is damaged, the cultivator himself will also suffer certain trauma. Severe cases may even cause irreversible injuries. Hearing this, Su Bin smiled and waved his hand and said, even that old ghost wants to hurt me. My earth-based Taoism is not practiced in vain. Chapter 333 Months. Knowing that Su Bin was fine, Lu Yan was relieved. The 3 of them sat opposite each other, closed their eyes and began to regulate their breathing. 2 hours later, the 3 of them opened their eyes one after another. After 2 hours of regulating their breathing, the 3 of them were obviously in much better spirits than before. Seeing this, Lu Yan took the initiative to say, this trip to the ruins has really gained a lot. I wonder what plans you 2 fellow Taoists have for the future. Arrangements. Su Bin glanced at Zhang Daoying and then said, I don't have any plans. I just want to walk around with Brother Zhang and see different scenery. Zhang Daoying thought about it seriously before saying solemnly, I have a mission for the sect, and I must complete it this time. After completing it, I will return to the sect to continue my practice. I wonder what plans Brother Wang has. Lu Yan smiled, pointed to the center of Chenhu domain, and said, I have been entrusted by someone to go to Chenhu City, the most central part of Chenhu domain. After the matter is dealt with, I will go to Songhu domain to settle down. Chenhu City, the most prosperous city in Chenhu domain, neither of us have been there. Brother Wang, you must talk to us about the customs and people of Chenhu City next time we meet, Su Bin reminded with interest. Of course, Lu Ya said with a smile. Since we are not going in the same direction, we need to deal with the harvest this time as soon as possible. After Su Bin finished speaking, he took out the magic rhyme obtained from the magic cultivator from the storage ring and placed it in the middle of the three people. He also placed another ordinary Tao rhyme next to the magic rhyme and said, "It's mainly because of this magic rhyme. Magic rhyme is rare and the price is very high. If you want to sell it in a short period of time, I am afraid that someone will maliciously lower the price. The other Tao rhymes are not so precious, but the prices are generally high. I don't particularly need the resources exchanged for this magic rhyme. If there is a risk of being underpriced, I suggest that you take it slowly and find a suitable opportunity to sell it," Lu Ya said. Brother Wang really hit the nail on the head. I think so too. Su Bin clapped his hands and laughed twice. Then he turned his gaze to Zhang Daoying, and seeing that he had no reaction, he decided, then it's settled first. This wisp of magic charm must be sold at a high price. Brother Wang, when we sell this wisp of magic charm, the next time we meet will be the time to divide the profits. Su Bin's lofty look made Lu Ya laugh. I don't know when we will meet next time, Zhang Daoyao and Su Daoyao. You must keep up your training speed and don't let me catch up, Lu Ya teased again. Ha, Brother Wang, when you finish this matter, you can come to the sect to find me. Then I will treat you to drink the fine wine of my sect, Zhang Daoying added. It's a deal. After a while, a rainbow light flew out of the cave and flew straight towards Chenhuayu. In the cave, Zhang Daoying and Su Bin just watched Lu Ya disappear into the sky. After a long time, until Lu Ya's figure disappeared, Su Bin sighed, Brother Wang, you are really a genius. Brother Zhang, if you fight him to the death, what are your chances of winning? Zhang Daoying stared at the sky, and said in a condensed tone, if it is a fight to the death, my chances of winning should be 50-50. He really didn't dare to say this directly. After all, he did see Lu Ya's previous performance, and it was no exaggeration to say that he was amazing. I actually forgot to spar with Brother Wang. Zhang Daoying clapped his hands and was about to turn into a swordlight to chase the direction where Lu Ya disappeared, but was stopped by Su Bin. Brother Zhang, your escape technique should not be as good as Brother Wang's. If you chase him now, there's basically no hope of catching up, Su Bin said quickly. It's better to remember the sparring in your heart. When we meet next time, it will be time for you and him to decide who is better. After listening, Zhang Wuai nodded in agreement. Then he and Su Bin both set up the escape light, distinguished the direction, and left quickly. Time flies, and 3 months have passed in the blink of an eye. In a courtyard, Lu Ya slowly opened his eyes from the quiet room, and a turbid air disappeared between heaven and earth as he breathed in and out. He subconsciously opened the skill panel. Name, Lu Yan. Lifespan, 27/899 years old. Realm, early golden elixir stage. 28/200, Kung Fu. Foundation establishment of Chongchun Kung Fu Peak. 50000, 50000. Skills, perfect fire controlling technique, perfect golden sword key, perfect wind controlling technique, perfect water controlling technique, perfect palm thunder, peak of shocking wind curse. 50000/50000, peak of rainbow transformation technique. 50000/50000, realm of swift wind escape. 66495, 50000, realm of clear spirit technique. 47542, 50000, realm of bewitching soul. 48598, 50000, realm of one key capturing technique. 342185/50000, realm of earth controlling technique. 375852/2000000, realm of red sun immortal body. 50000/50000, Zuanian spirit shield peak. 50000, 50000, blood river giant body peak. 39648, 50000, weapon refining technique level 2. 420/5000 magic powers, sun true fire, life extinguishing finger, Guangmo wind, calling wind and rain, 1 yuan weak water, 9 Heaven's Thunder Method Magic PowerPoints. 0 Status, 3 flowers gathered at the top of the head after 3 months of peaceful cultivation. The experience points of various spells have been steadily increasing. Among them, the Yiki capture method has even completed most of the accuracy bars, and only more than 100,000 experience points are needed to break through the peak limit and step into the realm of magical powers. The amazingness of other spells is also steadily increasing, but when Lu Ya's eyes swept to the column of exercises, he felt a little regretful. At present, he has not obtained any high-level exercises. Fortunately, the Chongchun Gong that has reached the peak limit can satisfy his practice, so Lu Ya is not too concerned. In contrast, the 3 flowers gathered at the top of the head in the status column attracted Lu Ya's attention more. This time in the ruins, if it weren't for the 3 flowers on his head, Lu Ya might have been besieged and killed because of the exhaustion of mana. The 3 flowers have gathered on the top of my head. When can I reach the state of 5 key converging to the origin? Lu Ya rubbed his cheeks. He had no idea about the 5 key converging to the origin. The only guess was that the 5 internal organs were trained to the limit, and then the physical strength was directly satisfied, so as to open the state of 5 key converging to the origin. But this was just a guess after all, and Lu Ya didn't even have a reference. After thinking again and again, Lu Ya stood up and walked out. In 3 months, he had thoroughly digested and absorbed his gains. At this moment, his combat power has increased by at least 30 to 50% compared to before. In his current state, he can already use the finger of extermination many times. It's time to continue on the road. Pulling open the gate of the courtyard, Lu Ya looked at the sparsely populated streets, and a trace of warmth rose in his heart for no reason. This is a small town for cultivation. The city lord is barely at the golden core stage and poses no threat. Therefore, this city is indeed an excellent place for cultivation for Lu Ya. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, Xiaoguang City. Chenhe City is located on a whole plain in the center of Chenhe Domain. The whole city is built of a black and blue giant stone called Xiaoguang Rock. Every evening, when the sunset shines on Chenhe City, it will emit a layer of warm golden light, as if the sunset in the skies printed on the black and blue giant stone, so it is also called Xiaoguang City. In the evening of this day, the sun was setting in the west, and the whole Chenhe City gradually began to emit golden light. Lu Ya came from afar on the rainbow light. When he saw this scene, he opened his eyes wide in surprise. In his vision, the huge city located on the earth in the distance seemed to have turned into a golden city in an instant. It was so dazzling and unforgettable. The creation of nature is really magnificent and magical. It is also a wonder to be able to build such a huge city with Xiaoguang Rock. He stopped to watch for a while, until the sun completely set and the golden light in front of him dissipated. Lu Ya set off to the Chenhe City in front. After entering the city, Lu Ya found an inn that looked extremely luxurious, opened a separate courtyard, and settled down in Chenhe City. It was still early, and Chenhe City was not a small town. Lights were lit one by one, and peddlers pushed wooden carts along the street to sell their wares. On the carts, there were oil lamps hanging. After Lu Ya settled down, he would not waste such time. On the one hand, he wanted to experience the customs of Chenhe City, and on the other hand, he took the opportunity to find out more about the various forces in Chenhe City, which would also facilitate his subsequent actions. Shopkeeper, I am a newcomer, and I love food and drink. I wonder if you can recommend the most famous food in Xiaoguang City. The people of Chenhe City are also strange. They prefer to call this city Xiaoguang City rather than Chenhe City. The innkeeper was busy calculating today's revenue when he heard a clear and deep voice at the desk. He looked up and saw a young man with eyes like bright stars looking at him with a smile. The shopkeeper recognized that this was a big customer who had just booked a 3-month long-term rental of the courtyard. He immediately replied with a smile on his face, "Young master, you have finally asked the right person. In our Xiaoguang City, the most famous is the Xiaoguang Wanzhang Tower. There is a famous dish in this Xiaoguang Wanzhang Tower, called Xiaoguang Wanzhang. I have tried it once a few years ago. After eating it, I just felt like I was floating on the heavens. It was really unforgettable." "Oh? There are such exotic dishes, Lu Yang asked curiously. Where's this Xiaoguang Wanzhang Tower in the city, so that I can go and try it? This is simple. Young master is new here and is not familiar with the way. I will send a waiter to lead the way for you. This way, there will be no mistakes. The shopkeeper smiled and called over a waiter who looked quite shrewd, and carefully instructed him. Lu Yu bowed and thanked him. Thank you so much, shopkeeper, and thank you for troubling this young man. No, the shopkeeper waved his hand quickly. The waiter also smiled and walked out the door first, calling out to Lu Yu as he walked, Young master, you have to hurry up. If you go too late, there may be no seats left in the Xiaoguang Wanzhang Tower. Lu Yu hurriedly followed. Walking on the street with a waiter, Lu Yu was not idle either, and started chatting with the waiter. My dear brother, is there anything I need to pay attention to in Xiaoguang City? You know I am a foreigner. If I don't understand the customs here, it would be a small matter to make a fool of myself. But if I provoke someone who shouldn't be provoked, and lose my life for nothing, that would be a great injustice. As Lu Yu said this, he took out a medium-grade spirit stone from his sleeve and naturally stuffed it into the hands of the waiter. The waiter was called a waiter, but in fact he was also a cultivator in the key training realm. Seeing Lu Yu's generosity, his smile became even brighter. The innkeeper then began to talk. Sir, our Xiaoguang city is the most prosperous city in the entire Chenhu domain, especially in the field of forging. Every 10 years, a nascent soul-level spiritual treasure will be forged. This is also the most popular treasure-seeking conference in our Xiaoguang city, which is held every 10 years. However, this treasure-seeking conference was only held 3 years ago, and the next one will have to wait until 7 years later. Apart from this treasure-seeking conference, our Xiaoguang city doesn't have any rules, but there is one thing you need to pay attention to. At this point, the innkeeper's voice became much lower. After looking around, he slowed down his pace, walked side by side with Lu Yang, and introduced in a low voice, there are 5 major casting families in our Xiaoguang city, and each of them is a nascent soul family. Most of the spiritual treasures produced in the treasure-seeking conference are forged by the 5 major families. Among the 5 major families of Lintong, Huoyi, and Zhang, any one of them is enough to stomp their feet and shake the whole Xiaoguang city. If you meet these 5 major families, you must be careful in what you say and do. Especially when you meet the Zhang family, it is best not to have any conflict. Even if you suffer a little loss, you should not make enemies with the Zhang family. The words of the inn waiter made Lu Yu silent. Even a waiter in Chenhu city can say such words. How arrogant and domineering must the Zhang family be, and how many evil deeds have they done to make the waiter emphasize so much? Don't worry, brother, I came to Xiaoguang city just to see the local customs and people here. The 5 major families are very far away from us. To put it bluntly, even if we want to provoke them, I am afraid they will not take it seriously. Right, that's natural. You are just a small people. Even if you want to provoke them, no one will take you seriously. Just as Lu Yu was chatting with the waiter, a harsh voice suddenly interrupted them. Lu Yu turned his head and saw a boy about 14 or 15 years old, wearing brocade clothes, followed by several guards who had perfected their key training, who walked up so swaggeringly. Lu Yu's expression did not change at all. He had met more than 1 or 2 people like him, but he did not take it seriously. He did not expect that they would talk about the real thing during this casual chat. What you said is very true. I naturally know that the Zhang family is a high-ranking Yuanying family and will not treat us like ordinary people. However, this young man has admired the 5 great families of Xiaoguang city for a long time, and he is new here, so I chatted with him for a while, although he was facing a kid who was a dozen years younger than him. The innkeeper had a servile attitude and was very careful in his words, not daring to make any offensive remarks. This young man naturally knows that our Xiaoguang city is a hospitable city. We must treat this friend well and not discredit our 5 great families of Xiaoguang city. The young man was comforted by the attitude of the innkeeper, so he raised his head, dragged out a long nasal sound from his nose, and said with a serious look, and then walked away with a few guards. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 332. A good show. Are these the people from the 5 major families that the young man mentioned? Lu Yang asked after the young man and his group walked away. Yes, sir, that young man is a descendant of the Zhang family, the waiter of the inn replied with lingering fear. Lu Yang looked in the direction where the young man of the Zhang family left, and said, I see that although the young man of the Zhang family is a little arrogant, His words and deeds are still well behaved, so he doesn't seem that scary. Hearing this, the waiter smiled bitterly, shook his head and paused for a long time before continuing, "Sir, you just came here, and you haven't seen what the real descendants of the Zhang family are like." After the voice fell, he hurriedly looked around and saw that there was no one else dressed like the young man. He breathed a sigh of relief, but he didn't want to continue explaining. He just said sullenly, "In short, you should listen to me, and stay away from people from the Zhang family when you meet them." Seeing this, Lu Ye didn't continue to talk about this topic, but just nodded to indicate that he had made a note of it. However, after such an episode, the two of them fell into silence for a while. It was not until they arrived in front of a tall building that the waiter of the inn regained his previous enthusiasm. "Look, young master, this is the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building. Every time the sun sets, the whole building will emit colorful rays of light, which is more dazzling than the golden light emitted by the Xiaoguang rock. It is really wonderful." The waiter looked at the tall building in front of him with yearning and envy. Lu Ye also looked up at this stone building, which was about 30 feet high. Among the buildings that were at most 10 feet high, this tall building was so eye-catching. In this 13-story building, countless guests were chatting and laughing, toasting and toasting. "Young master, let's go in quickly. Looking at the number of people, I'm afraid there are no more seats." The waiter looked a little anxious at this time, and urged Lu Ya anxiously. Seeing this, Lu Ya did not stop and walked towards the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building with the waiter. Seeing Lu Ya leave, the waiter was quite excited. He took 2 steps at a time and led Lu Ya into the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building. After entering the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building, Lu Ya saw the waiter of the inn negotiating with a waiter in the building. Not long after, the waiter came over excitedly and said, "Young master, you are so lucky. There is only one empty seat on the 7th floor. If you come again in the evening, I am afraid you will have to go home." Hearing this, Lu Ye also smiled and thanked him. Then, under the guidance of the waiter in the building, he went all the way to the 7th floor. As he said, there was an empty table in the corner. The waiter of the inn invited Lu Ye to sit down, and then asked Lu Ye what he wanted to taste. During this time, he explained the general price of the dishes to Lu Ye. Lu Ye didn't care, so he ordered all the signature dishes to be served, and took out a medium-grade spirit stone and stuffed it into the hand of the inn waiter. The waiter in the inn was even more enthusiastic and busy, and soon left with the waiter in the building. There was a window next to where Lu Ya sat, through which he could see the bustling street below and the Hongfen restaurant across the street with lewd sounds. He looked at the scenery outside the window with interest, and did not look away until the dishes were served. Picking up the chopsticks, Lu Ye first tasted the so-called famous dish Xiaoguang Wanzhang. When the dishes entered his mouth, Lu Ye felt the rich taste in his mouth, and for a moment he couldn't help but be hungry. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly heard a burst of noise in his ears. The noise was not small, so many diners heard it. Soon, someone looked downstairs and shouted, "There's a good show to watch." Seeing this, Lu Ye put down the wine glass in his hand and looked down. On the street, between the entrance of the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building and the Hongfen restaurant across the street, a large group of people gathered. There were 2 groups of people in the encirclement. On one side were 4 or 5 young men dressed in brocade and luxurious clothes, and on the other side was a young man in gray linen clothes, about 18 or 19 years old. At this time, the young men were looking at the young man in gray linen clothes with anger. One of them even pointed his finger at his nose and kept cursing. Lu Ye was on the 7th floor at this time, more than 10 feet away from the ground, so he couldn't hear clearly what was being said, so he concentrated his consciousness on his ears, and the sound suddenly became much clearer. The young man in fancy clothes was furious, and he yelled at the young man in hemp clothes opposite him, "Zhang Yuanmu, you are a member of my Zhang family. Before, you were busy starting a new business, but now you are working as a waiter in this restaurant. Do you want to disgrace our Zhang family? You are happy, right?" The young man in hemp clothes opposite him looked at the young man with a cold look on his face, and said disdainfully, "Why, I eat with my own hands, and I am in your eyes again? If it doesn't work, you can slap me to death in the street, so that I won't lose face for the Zhang family. What do you think, you?" Hearing this, the young man in fancy clothes was about to continue yelling, but was stopped by another young man who looked a few years older. "Okay, shut up, 9th brother." The man had a good temperament, and the fluctuation of his mana also belonged to the foundation building realm. It can be seen that among the young men, this foundation building cultivator should be the leader. The man stepped forward, looked calmly at Zhang Yuanmu, who was wearing hemp clothes, and said, "As a member of the Zhang family, you have no respect for elders and the eldest legitimate son, and you are damaging the family's reputation. According to the family rules, you will be punished by the family law. Do you know that?" Zhang Yuanmu was not afraid at all. He sneered and said, "No respect for elders? No respect for the eldest legitimate son? Damaging the family's reputation? Where are the elders and the eldest legitimate son? As for damaging the family's reputation, I make a living with my own hands, peacefully and steadily, but you drove me out of the building with great fanfare, and questioned me in public. Doesn't this damage the family's reputation?" The foundation-building young man stepped forward and pressed the issue. "You are so sharp-tongued. Do you know that you are a member of the Yuanying family, but you are doing this menial job of serving tea and water and greeting people with a smile? Has the Zhang family reached the point where they can't even afford to feed one mouth? Or did you do this on purpose, waiting for us to come here with the intention of damaging the family's reputation? What exactly is your intention, Zhang Yuanmu?" The hemp-clothed young man still had a stern expression, and just said indifferently, "Are you done? If you are done, go back to where you came from. I am not like you. You can live a life of luxury by idling all day long. If I didn't work, would I still be alive today? I'm afraid I would have starved to death in the Zhang family you always talk about." After saying that, he turned and entered the Xiaguang One Zhang building. Seeing this, several young masters of the Zhang family looked like they wanted to break in but didn't dare to. In the end, they could only say a few harsh words and left angrily under the gaze of many onlookers. "This is really interesting." Lu Ya picked up the chopsticks again and said to himself in his heart. "Everyone, remember to vote." Chapter 333 Zhang Family Changes. In a blink of an eye, Lu Ya stayed in Xiaguang City for more than half a month. During this half-month, Lu Ya not only got a general understanding of the various forces in Xiaguang City, but also focused on collecting and summarizing the information about Zhang's family. This action was not in vain. With the intentional exploration of a Jinden's Henren, at least many secret rumors about Zhang's family were still heard by him. For example, the secret jade slip of Zhang's family in his hand. Lu Ya did not delay and slowly probed his consciousness into the jade slip. Suddenly, a large amount of text appeared in his mind like a scroll. A long, long time ago, so long ago that the Taoist Jiuduan was still alive, the Zhang family was just a small foundation-building family at that time. It was because of the Taoist Jiuduan, a genius in refining, that the Zhang family gradually reached the peak under the leadership of the Taoist Jiuduan. After the nine-forged Taoists successfully broke the pill and formed an infant, the weapon refining technology reached a higher level. The reputation of the nine-forged Zhang family spread throughout most of the Chenhu area, and successfully ranked among the fifth largest weapon refining families in the Xiaguang city. In the nearly 1,000 years that followed, the nine-forged Zhang family did not decline at all. Various weapon refiners emerged in an endless stream, and the family's power expanded rapidly, ushering in a golden period of development. At its peak, the nine-forged Zhang family was already the top of the 5 major weapon refining families, and the other 4 major families were almost unable to breathe. However, this peak began to change after the nine-forged Taoist ignored the opposition of his clansmen and went out to seek further progress in the way of weapon refining. At first, no one cared about the news of the nine-forged Taoist's departure, and no one thought much about it. After all, as long as a great cultivator at the peak of the nascent soul stage did not actively seek death or step into some dangerous places, there was basically no possibility of death. However, when no news of the Taoist Jiuduan had been sent back to the Jiuduan Zhang family for decades and hundreds of years, the news of the Taoist Jiuduan's death in a foreign land spread like snowflakes throughout the entire Xiaguang city and even the entire Chenhu region in a very short time. Although the Jiuduan Zhang family at that time was not only the Taoist Jiuduan who was in the nascent soul stage, but the reputation of the Taoist Jiuduan was deeply rooted in Xiaguang city. When the news of the Taoist Jiuduan's death spread, the situation of the Jiuduan Zhang family inevitably became problematic. The most prominent one was the 4 major weapon refining families that had been suppressed for a long time. When the Taoist Jiuduan was alive, the 4 major families had to keep a low profile, but after the Taoist Jiuduan disappeared, the 4 major families became active again. In the hundreds of years that followed, the 4 major families joined forces to suppress the Jiuduan Zhang family, and the situation of the Jiuduan Zhang family became more and more difficult. At the most serious time, Even the replacement of the nascent soul cultivators almost had problems, causing them to almost fall out of the top 5 families. Under such internal and external troubles, the Zhang clan members turned their attention to the Zhang clan's direct lineage, which was the main line where the nine-forged Taoist was located. They believed that the unfair treatment that the Zhang clan was suffering now was caused by the nine-forged Taoist, who insisted on leaving the family despite dissuasion. If the nine-forged Taoist had not left the family at the beginning, nothing would have happened now. It is strange to say that since different voices appeared within the Zhang clan and rumors of opposition to the direct lineage spread, the pressure from the outside world has been reduced, but the internal contradictions have become more and more acute. Soon, on a dark and windy night, the Zhang clan finally had an accident. The process of change can no longer be traced, but the result is that the main lineage clan members who originally belonged to the orthodox direct lineage of the nine-forged Taoist were beaten to dust and became a branch of the Zhang clan. On the other hand, the clan members of the branch line ascended the throne of the head of the family in one fell swoop and became the orthodox direct line of the Zhang clan. Since then, the strong branches and weak trunks have eventually led to the reversal of the branches and trunks. It is hard to say how many dirty deals are hidden in it, and how many wise people are willing to be dragged into it because of various conditions. In short, everything happened naturally. In the following days, under the leadership of the new direct lineage, the Jiuduan Zhang family changed its strategy and maintained cooperation with the 4 major families. Although it still could not resist the result of the slow decline in the ranking, it still maintained the dignity of the 5 major families. At the same time, within the Zhang family, targeting the original direct lineage seemed to have become a family tradition and a correct family style. Originally, some people were afraid of the reputation of the Jiuduan Taoist and did not dare to do too much, but as time went by, the Jiuduan Taoist was gradually forgotten in the long river of time, and the lives of the old direct lineage clansmen became worse and worse. And Zhang Yuanmu is the descendant of the Jiuduan Taoist lineage. Because of the deliberate suppression of the Zhang family, no one mentions the Jiuduan branch now. They are just the weakest branch of the Zhang family. They don't even live with the Zhang family members on weekdays, let alone get help from the Zhang family. The current Zhang family is quite strong. There are 2 Yuanying Zhenren in the family. One is Zhang Dequan, the previous patriarch, and the other is Zhang Zibo, the new patriarch who has just taken over as the patriarch. If nothing unexpected happens, the status of the Zhang family will be stable for nearly 1,000 years. In the quiet room, Lu Ya slowly put down the jade slip in his hand, and a sigh flashed in his eyes. Senior Zhang, if you were still alive, I'm afraid you couldn't imagine that the Zhang family is in such a situation now. This is not right. After all, Senior Zhang Jiuduan still has residual soul power in the Jiuduan secret realm. After he completes the commission of the Jiuduan Taoist, he can return to the Jiuduan secret realm through the jade slip. Lu Yu has not forgotten that there is still a Kyankan Jiuduan furnace in the secret realm, which is still terrifying from today's perspective, waiting for him to take it. However, in order to obtain the Kyankan Jiuduan furnace, the first thing to do is to return the inheritance to the Zhang family. Lu Yu has already made a rough consideration in his mind. During this half-month, through his careful observation, he finally confirmed that the Zhang family is indeed arrogant and domineering. From the clan members to the servants, everyone has a look of arrogance on their faces. In the whole Xiaoguang city, 60% of the things are caused by the Zhang family. From Lu Ya's point of view, this is simply too outrageous. You have to know that the patriarch of the Zhang family is a cultivator at the Yuanying level, and there are more Jinden in the clan than can be counted on one hand. It is really unreal that they would let the clan members act like this. But this kind of thing really happened, and the whole Xiaoguang city is accustomed to it, as if they don't do this, they are not Zhang family. Therefore, Lu Ya does not intend to pass on the 9 refining techniques to the Zhang family's direct line. In contrast, Lu Ya also observed Zhang Yuanmu for a long time during this period of time. Perhaps this person has not been favored by the Zhang family since he was a child. He has been used to hard times, and his behavior is quite mature and sophisticated. Even the refinement of the weapon has become a second-level refiner. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 334 Contact. Zhang Yuanmu only has the 7th level of key training, but he is a second-level weapon refiner, which has a lot to say. Moreover, Lu Yu can be sure that his weapon refining skills are not known to the main line of the Zhang family. After all, weapon refining skills are not cultivation. As long as they are not revealed in front of others, they will not be discovered. This is also a little secret of the other party that Luya discovered by chance, which is harmless. Luya plans to find an opportunity to communicate with him. If there are no major problems, it may be a good choice to hand over the 9 refining techniques to the other party. First, the other party is the descendant of the 9 refining Taoist, and second, he has completed the commission and returned the 9 refining techniques to the Zhang family members, which did not violate Luya's own heart. This wave of operations can be said to be returning the property to its original owner. As for what the other party will do and what he wants to do after getting the 9 refining techniques, that is not what Luya needs to consider. After making a decision in his heart, Luya no longer thinks about this matter. Anyway, he is more important. Putting away the jade slip, Luya slowly enters the state of practice. One after another, spiritual palms emerged from around his body, and under Luya's control, they slowly made various gestures. Now, there are only a little over 130,000 experience points left in the Yiki capture technique. Luya plans to focus on the Yiki capture technique during this period of time. After the experience points are full, he believes that there will be enough gains. It is not just a matter of one magical power, but also a little more magical power points. Now Luya is most in need of magical power points. After all, the Red Sun indestructible body has reached its peak limit, and the Blood River Giant body technique is not far from it. These body refining spells are waiting for the magical power points to break through, and they are also the cornerstones for the birth of subsequent magical powers. Luya can't help but be anxious. However, after practicing the Red Sun indestructible body to the peak limit, Luya always feels that it is not as strong as he said when he bought this body refining spell. He can regenerate broken limbs, and his body defense is comparable to the best second-level magic weapon. It is also very good. As long as he's not hit in the heart, brain and other vital parts, he can recover. However, the so-called heart is broken but not dead, or even reborn with blood, is a shadow of the world. After thinking about it, Luya could only attribute it to his low cultivation level, which made it impossible for him to continue to cultivate the Red Sun immortal body, or to his current cultivation level and physical strength, which no longer supported him to continue to cultivate. This led to the fact that the peak perfection he saw now was only the peak perfection of the current Jinden level. Perhaps after he reached the nascent soul stage, he could continue to cultivate the Red Sun immortal body. However, the nascent soul was too far away from Luya. It had been several months since the Jinden stage, and his progress had barely reached a little more than 1/10. At this rate, it would take at least 5, 6, 7, 8, or 10 years to go from the early stage of the Jinden to the middle stage of the Jinden. This was only from the early stage of the Jinden to the middle stage, not to mention from the middle stage to the late stage, and then to the late stage perfection, which would take more time than now, not less. Overall, it would take at least nearly 20 years from the Jinden to the nascent soul. Compared to the time from key training to foundation building, and foundation building to the Jinden, this time span was already very long. By the time Luya reached the nascent soul stage, he would probably be a middle-aged uncle in his 50s. 50 years old. What does it mean to be over 50 and know one's destiny? How many 50 years can one live? Even if we calculate it based on Luya's current lifespan of nearly 900 years, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. Luya almost forgot that he can live for nearly 900 years now, and can have 1850 years. Compared with that, 20 years doesn't seem to be that long, just sprinkle water. Thinking of this, Luya's anxiety about the midlife crisis immediately disappeared. At my age, becoming a unyielding should be regarded as a young and promising person with unlimited potential, Luya smiled and brainwashed himself with satisfaction. I don't know if my former adopted sons will hold my thighs and beg me to take care of them after they know that their adopted father is now a godlike figure beyond Pengzhu. Only when he is alone will Luya think back to the people or things in his previous life, which brings a different feeling to his nerves that have been assimilated by this world. It's a pity that my adopted sons may not see it. After practicing until the evening as usual, Luya went out with ease and went to the Xiaoguang Wenzheim building to taste the food. During this period, thanks to his generosity, the waiters of this inn have long regarded him as a financial sponsor. Someone went to the Xiaoguang Wenzheim building early to reserve a seat for him, ordered dishes, and waited for him to go to eat. There was no way. Who asked Luya to give too much? Because a waiter had reserved a seat in advance, Luya went all the way to the 11th floor and sat down in front of a window with the best sightseeing view. Not long after, All kinds of delicacies were served. Lu Yu noticed when he came. Zhang Yuanmu was still working as a waiter in this Xiaoguang Wanzhang building. He had had several brief exchanges with him these days, mostly focusing on the work in the building, and did not involve personal privacy. However, it can be seen from this that the owner behind this Xiaoguang Wanzhang building is not an ordinary person. The Zhang family, one of the 5 major families in Xiaoguang City, naturally has a good background. Lu Yu ate until late at night. He settled the bill only after he saw Zhang Yuanmu finish his work for the day and leave the building. He then slowly observed Zhang Yuanmu with his spiritual sense and followed him towards the outer city. After walking for a while, Lu Ya suddenly sensed some hostility, which made him a little confused. Then his spiritual sense expanded again and probed in front of Zhang Yuanmu. Then he saw that at the corner of an empty street, several street youths with malicious faces were waiting there leisurely. This made Lu Yu understand that the hostility was not directed at him, but at Zhang Yuanmu. On the other hand, Zhang Yuanmu still did not notice all this and walked forward as usual. Soon, in Lu Ya's perception, Zhang Yuanmu was only a few feet away from the ambush site, and those ambushing youths were ready to come out from their hiding places. At this moment, Zhang Yuanmu was like a cheetah, crouching low, his magic power suddenly bursting out, and his speed instantly increased to the extreme. Before those street youths could react, he passed through the alley and ran towards the end of the road without looking back. Seeing this, Lu Ya smiled dumbly. He is quite clever. Seeing that the target had escaped, the street youths were naturally unhappy. The simple matter suddenly became complicated, which made them grit their teeth and chase after him. However, compared with the street youths, Zhang Yuanmu was more familiar with the environment of this outer city. It didn't take long for him to shake off the pursuers. Leaning against a low wall, Zhang Yuanmu suppressed the boiling blood and magic power and exhaled slowly. Really good. Suddenly, a clear voice sounded from behind him, causing Zhang Yuanmu's pupils to shrink to the size of a needle tip. He turned around suddenly and saw a tall figure standing quietly in the darkness above the low wall. Perhaps because he didn't sense the hostility, or perhaps because he had a clear understanding of his current situation, Zhang Yuanmu didn't do anything irrational. He just stared at the mysterious man on the low wall, suppressed his voice and slowly said, "Junior Yuchu, nice to meet you, senior, haha, you even changed your name, you're really cautious." Lu Ya stood in the dark, looking at Zhang Yuanmu's nervous and serious face, and couldn't help but smile in his heart. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 335, Following the Clues. Seeing his lie exposed, Zhang Yuanmu was shocked and could hardly control his body. He was about to flee along the planned route. Unexpectedly, the clear voice came again. Although the tone did not change at all, it suddenly became extremely dangerous in Zhang Yuanmu's perception. "If I were you, I would definitely stay where I was and not move at all." The cold murderous intent enveloped Zhang Yuanmu's body like a mist, making him subconsciously stop all his movements. Before he could think of a countermeasure, he heard the clear voice say again, "Okay, relax. If I wanted to kill you, you would be dead." Zhang Yuanmu couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard it. This was indeed the case. The huge, cold and irresistible murderous intent explained everything. He slowly raised his head and looked directly at the figure standing on the low wall. As his sight rose, he gradually saw the person coming. How is it? Is it very unexpected? After seeing the shock, confusion in his eyes, Lu Ya sat down casually and asked Zhang Yuanmu in front of him. Zhang Yuanmu came back to his senses after being asked by Lu Ya, and nodded in confusion. He didn't understand why this guest who had met him a few times in the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building would appear in front of him at this time. According to common sense, there should be no intersection between them. The only possible intersection is probably in the Xiaoguang Wanzhang building, with the limited words of "What do you want to eat? Please come this way." Zhang Yuanmu bowed respectfully, with a very humble attitude, and said, "Senior, I really don't know what I have that is worth such a big fuss from you." When Lu Ya heard it, he knew that the man in front of him seemed to have misunderstood something. However, he did not explain, but jumped down from the low wall and walked towards the alley. "Don't you want to come together? Don't you want to see who wants to deal with you?" Zhang Yuanmu was stunned, and then his eyes flashed. Finally, he couldn't help but take a step and catch up with Lu Ya. The two walked in the dim streets one after the other. Zhang Yuanmu couldn't help but speak several times, but when he saw Lu Ya walking slowly in front of him, he finally held back and just followed behind Lu Ya silently. "Yes, we're here," Lu Ya stopped and signaled to Zhang Yuanmu behind him. Zhang Yuanmu took 2 steps forward and looked in front of Lu Ya. When he saw the scene in front of him, his eyes widened. In the alley, the young men who had ambushed him before were now standing motionless at the foot of the wall, facing the wall, and their bodies swayed slowly with small movements, looking as if they were blinded. "That's it, do you know them?" Lu Ya turned his head and looked at Zhang Yuanmu and asked. Zhang Yuanmu shook his head. He had always been law-abiding on weekdays, and he had basically no intersection with these street youths. That means he was instructed by someone. "I don't know how many twists and turns the person behind him has made," Lu Ya said, and then continued, "but it shouldn't matter. Now the vine is in my hand. As long as I follow the vine, I will get the melon sooner or later." Then, in Zhang Yuanmu's shocked eyes, Lu Ya asked those people, "Who assigned you to attack this person?" The ordinary words, "under the blessing of magic power," spread strange patterns. The people facing the wall turned around in a daze, with confusion in their eyes. One of them opened his lips and a strange name came out of his mouth. Soul-type spells confuse people's minds. Zhang Yuanmu saw this scene in front of him, and the corresponding explanation subconsciously emerged in his mind. Only soul-type spells can do this so easily. Three-eyed purple dragon? Do you know it? Lu Ya repeated the name that the man uttered and looked at Zhang Yuanmu. Zhang Yuanmu shook his head, indicating that he had never heard of it. "Okay," Lu Ya waved his hand, "this name sounds like a nickname used by a leader in a local gang." "Ask again." Lu Ya asked a few more questions and found out where the three-eyed purple dragon was. Seeing that Lu Ya had already found out the way to the three-eyed purple dragon's house, Zhang Yuanmu couldn't help but say, "Senior, let's forget it. I just want to live a good life. I don't want to know if there is someone behind it, and I don't plan to retaliate or seek revenge." "Oh? So that means I'm meddling in other people's business? Are you sure you really don't want to retaliate or seek revenge?" Lu Ya was half a head taller than Zhang Yuanmu. At this time, he lowered his head and looked at Zhang Yuanmu in front of him. Under Lu Ya's gaze, Zhang Yuanmu finally gritted his teeth and said, "I can't afford to offend him now. The other party is a foundation-building cultivator. My best choice is to pretend that I know nothing and not pursue it." Seeing Zhang Yuanmu's performance, Lu Ya nodded in his heart. At least he still has some blood. If he is really a coward, he doesn't know whether this weapon refining technique is a blessing or a curse for him. "Let's go. I'm kind-hearted today. I'll help you get this over with. I'll have something to say to you later," Lu Ya turned around and said casually. Hearing this, Zhang Yuanmu hurriedly followed Lu Ya's footsteps. Not far away, he heard several dull noises coming from the alley behind him. His footsteps paused slightly, and then returned to normal. Half an hour later, in a luxurious room, a burly man with a vertical scar on his forehead was kneeling on the smooth floor in a proper manner. Beads of sweat slid down his neck, but he didn't dare to move at all. Opposite him, on the expensive brocade tiger fur chair, Lu Ya was sitting there casually. Senior, I really don't know what you are talking about. Those people are not my subordinates. How can I control them?" Lu Ya lowered his head and just looked at the gang leader in front of him called Three-Eyed Purple Dragon. He asked softly, "Tell me, you can earn a few hundred spirit stones a month. Is it worth it to risk your life like this?" The burly man of Three-Eyed Purple Dragon heard the words, and the veins on his forehead bulged. His pair of big copper bell eyes stared straight at Lu Ya's face. After staring for a few breaths, he grinned and asked tentatively, "If I say it, will you let me live?" "Well, I could have, but I'm afraid I can't now. You know that your life and death are only in my mind. In other words, your life is mine now. You use my things to bargain with me. If it were you, would you agree?" Lu Ya still spoke in a calm tone, but the words he said made Zhang Yuanmu, who was standing next to him, feel cold in his heart. In his heart, he kept wondering whether Lu Ya was good or evil. Judging from his style of doing things, he seemed to have nothing to do with the righteous. Upon hearing this, the three-eyed purple dragon suddenly grinned fiercely, and his magic power suddenly burst out and rushed straight to his own dantian. "My life is up to me, everyone, remember to vote." Chapter 336 Delivery of Inheritance. Even if you die, you won't have an easy time. Zhang Yuanmu only felt a deadly threat emanating from the body of the three-eyed purple dragon. Before he could show a look of fear, the surging mana in the three-eyed purple dragon suddenly died down, as if nothing had happened. The three-eyed purple dragon hadn't laughed triumphantly before. It was like a goose with its throat pinched. Its face turned red, but it could only flap its wings randomly and struggle meaninglessly. Opposite him, Luya was still sitting on the tiger skin chair, with his right hand stretched out and clenched, as if he was holding the three-eyed purple dragon in his hand. You have the final say. Luya leaned forward slightly, and clenched his right hand slightly. Zhang Yuanmu saw that the foundation-building mana fluctuations emanating from the three-eyed purple dragon's body were forcibly pressed back into his body. The damage caused by the reversal of mana directly caused a blood mist to burst out from the pores of the three-eyed purple dragon. After a while, Luya led Zhang Yuanmu out of the room. Luya gently waved his hand, as if to shake off the blood on his hand. Look, as long as you have enough strength, everything you want to know can be known through various means, right? Zhang Yuanmu nodded woodenly without saying anything. Let's go to the next place, Luya called, and the two gradually disappeared into the darkness. 2 hours later, Luya threw the old man in the early stage of the golden core, who had already died, to the ground, and then a little flame popped out, watching the flame devour the body bit by bit. During this period, there was no smell or temperature emitted, and the body of a golden core true person just evaporated in the room out of thin air. Zhang Yuanmu was completely numb at this moment. He had guessed about Luya's strength before, but after he effortlessly killed the Foundation establishment, effortlessly killed the fake Dan, and even effortlessly killed the high and mighty golden core true person, he no longer dared to have any guesses about Luya's strength. I've been busy all night, and I'm finally done. Seeing that the body of the old man in the golden core had been evaporated, Luya waved his hand to disperse the fire crows, and stretched his body casually. This golden core is Zhang's golden core master, what do you think? After stretching, Luya turned his head and looked at Zhang Yuanmu. Zhang Yuanmu was silent for a few breaths, and then said, this is normal. Our branch has long been accustomed to it. After all, in their eyes, I am a waste that disgraces the reputation of the Zhang family. It is understandable that someone wants to get rid of me as soon as possible. Luya asked, have you ever thought about why your branch was suppressed by the Zhang family? Zhang Yuanmu suddenly raised his head, looked at Luya with a sharp gaze, and waited for his answer. Facing Zhang Yuanmu's eyes, Luya ignored him and just said to himself, forget it, this is your Zhang's internal affairs. I, an outsider, will not get involved. If you have the strength in the future, you will naturally know. If you don't have the strength, knowing this kind of thing will not be of any benefit to you. But what I want to talk about next is the matter between you and me. Let's change places. Zhang Yuanmu did not get the answer he expected. A trace of regret flashed in his eyes, and then he followed Luya and left here. The two returned to a dilapidated bungalow, which is where Zhang Yuanmu lives now. Zhang Yuanmu poured tea for Luya, and then sat opposite Luya, waiting for Luya to speak. Luya first took a sip of tea, and then said, I have been busy for so long. A sip of tea is a reward for my hard work. Zhang Yuanmu just watched Luya drink all the tea in the cup one sip at a time, his eyes calm. Luya put down the broken ceramic teacup, brewed for a while, and then said, you may be very curious, why I came to you, what is the relationship between you and me? Now I tell you, there is no relationship between you and me. You have never seen me before, and you will never see me again after tonight. As for why I appeared in front of you, that is a very long time ago. In short, I received an exhortation from an old friend, and came here specially to return something that had been lost for a long time to his descendants. I stayed in the city for a long time, and finally decided to give it to you, and then my mission was completed. As for what you want to do with it and what you are going to do after you get it, that is your business. Luya paused for a moment, then looked at Zhang Yuanmu and asked, how do you feel about refining instruments? Zhang Yuanmu answered without hesitation, I love refining instruments, and I look forward to the feeling of seeing a piece of magic weapon born in my hands. Every person in Xiaoguang City will aim to become a refiner, and I am no exception. Oh, so this is why you are already a second-level refiner at the 7th level of refinement. Zhang Yuanmu's face suddenly became a little ugly. The second-level refiner was his trump card that he had hidden until now, and he had never exposed it to anyone. He didn't expect that the person opposite him also knew it. Okay, don't make such a face. I just want to tell you that what you think is hidden is actually like a layer of gauze in the eyes of those who are interested. It has no effect at all. If you really want to hide something, you must not expose it in an unsafe environment. This will not do you any good. Zhang Yuanmu nodded to show that he understood. Luya looked at him and thought to himself, Senior Zhang, I, Luyan, have done my best to achieve this step. Not only did I let him out a sigh of relief, but I also personally demonstrated and taught him a lot of principles. How he will develop in the future depends on himself. After sorting out his thoughts, Lu Ya's face became a little solemn, and he said, "Concentrate your mind and I will hand over the things entrusted by the old friend to you." When Zhang Yuanmu heard this, he immediately restrained his mind and looked at Lu Ya motionlessly. Seeing this, Lu Ya pointed his right hand into a sword, and a purple light shone from his fingertips. Then he pushed the purple light slowly towards Zhang Yuanmu's forehead. Zhang Yuanmu saw Lu Ya's sword finger pointing at him, and he couldn't help but feel a little nervous, but he extinguished it immediately. If the other party wanted to kill him, why would he bother so much? After thinking this through, Zhang Yuanmu's mentality became much calmer, and he just watched quietly as Lu Ya's sword finger pointed at his forehead. As the purple light slowly sank into Zhang Yuanmu's forehead, a lot of information appeared in Zhang Yuanmu's mind, causing him to fall into shock instantly. Seeing him like this, Lu Ya quietly retracted his finger, thought about it, and left enough resources for him to live and practice for 3 months, and then left lightly. It was not until an hour later that the purple light in Zhang Yuanmu's eyes flashed away. He recalled the inheritance he had just received, and huge waves surged in his heart. 9 training instruments. It turned out to be the 9 training instruments that had been lost for thousands of years. He looked up suddenly, only to find that he was the only one left in the room, and Lu Ya had long since disappeared. Zhang Yuanmu picked up the storage bag with a complicated look, and then his eyes were full of determination. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 337, Picking Up a Bargain. After Lu Ya handed over the inheritance to Zhang Yuanmu, he left Zhang Yuanmu's residence. Handing over the inheritance to the descendants of the 9 forging Taoists can be regarded as a good destination for the 9 forging weapon art, which is worth his stay in Chenhua City for nearly a month. At this time, the commission has been completed, and Lu Ya did not stay in this Xiaoguang city. After all, he had solved a lot of people before. At this time, no accidents have occurred, but it is inevitable that he will be discovered. Although Lu Ya has the finger of extinction to erase the cause and effect, it is better to be safe than sorry. All the way out of the city, Lu Ya set up a rainbow light and went straight to the distance. It was not until Lu Ya flew away from Xiaoguang City for several hours that the sound of anger resounded through half of the city, and then the Xiaoguang City defense formation was opened, and no one was allowed to enter or leave. However, all this has nothing to do with Lu Ya, and at this time he has appeared thousands of miles away from Xiaoguang City. After flying all night, Lu Ya saw a market appear in front of him from afar. Lu Ya fell far away, restrained his own aura, and turned into a foundation-building cultivator. The key cultivating cultivators guarding the gate of the market saw Lu Ya, a foundation-building cultivator, and hurriedly greeted him respectfully, so he didn't even pay the fee and walked into the market leisurely. Changluo Market. This market was built by a foundation-building family. It has been prosperous for hundreds of years and has accumulated a good reputation near this market. Business is pretty good. Lu Ya strolled in it, just looking around, without any desire to buy. After all, with his current vision and background of the golden core, he can hardly take ordinary things seriously. Besides, this is just a market, what can attract him? Huh? Lu Ya let out a light exclamation and looked at a stall on the side of the road. The owner of the stall was a middle-aged casual cultivator with a scruffy beard. He was wearing a low-level gray robe that had been washed white. There were a few palm-sized patches stuck to the already worn-out robe like dog-skin plasters. At this moment, the stall owner folded his hands and squatted on a piece of bluestone. There were more than a dozen odds and ends on the black cloth in front of him. It was one of the odds and ends that surprised Lu Ya. It was an arrowhead. The surface of the arrowhead was rusty, and there was a little dirt on the rust, giving people the feeling that it had just been dug out of the soil. At this moment, the arrowhead was mixed in a pile of odds and ends, without any difference, and perfectly integrated into it. But from Lu Ya's point of view, there was still a trace of unusual aura emanating from the arrowhead, which he sensed. Lu Ya squatted in front of the stall and looked at the odds and ends casually. "My dear senior, I got all these treasures from the cave ruins 360 miles north of Changluofang City. Each one is extraordinary. Do you like any of them?" Seeing that Lu Ya, a foundation-building cultivator, was interested, the downtrodden stall owner put on a flattering smile, showing his yellow teeth, and boasted about his own things. Lu Ya pretended not to hear, but just picked up the arrowhead from the black cloth, put it in his hand, and gestured to the stall owner, This arrowhead looks interesting. How much is it? Oh. Senior, you have a good eye. This arrowhead was obtained by me at the risk of my life from a dangerous haul in the ruins. I know it is a good thing, but I don't have a good eye, so I can only sell it. The downtrodden stall owner said a lot of nonsense in an exaggerated manner. When Luyer was almost impatient, he finally said, 200 middle-grade spirit stones. This treasure is yours, Senior. 200 middle-grade spirit stones are too expensive. I was curious about this arrowhead. If it had a shaft and was a complete arrow, I might consider it, but now, Luya put down the arrowhead in his hand and made a gesture to stand up. Seeing that Luya was not fooled, the poor stall owner hurriedly tried to stop him. Senior, then please tell me the price. This treasure has met you, so it is destined to be with you. If it is suitable, let this treasure follow you. After all, he was a businessman, and the stall owner said this without any burden. 80 low-grade spirit stones. Luya squatted down again and said, Senior, this is a treasure that I have obtained after a lot of hard work. Even the cost on the road is more than this number. 100 middle-grade spirit stones. If you think it is suitable, you can take it away. Forget it, it's just an arrowhead whose function I don't know. Luya put down the arrowhead and stood up without hesitation to leave. Senior, unexpectedly, the down-and-out stall owner gritted his teeth, stood up, walked across the stall, came to Luya, looked around, and whispered, Senior, please stay. 130 medium-grade spirit stones, a complete arrow, and this arrowhead are all yours, but I need to receive the spirit stones first. Luya looked at the stall owner in surprise. Seeing that his expression did not seem to be false, he pondered for a moment and asked, Spirit stones are not a problem. The key is whether you are sure you really have it? If I find out that you have lied to me, As soon as the words fell, an aura of foundation building enveloped the body of the down-and-out stall owner, making his face turn pale. The breath was released and then retracted. When Luya's breath was restrained, the stall owner gasped a few times and said with lingering fear, How dare I lie to you, Senior? I have hidden the things at home. You are a master of foundation building. You will know if you come with me. Luya released his spiritual sense and carefully scanned him. After finding nothing wrong, he nodded and threw a bag of spiritual stones to him. Seeing Luya's agreement, the poor stall owner was overjoyed. He quickly took the spiritual stones, then wrapped them in black cloth and put them on his back. He turned to look at Luya and said, Senior, follow me. Luya and the other person walked all the way to a shanty town in the north of the market, and finally stopped in front of a house that was also shabby. Senior, please forgive me for the mess at home. The poor stall owner smiled and then pushed open the wooden door with a missing corner and walked in first. Luya stood at the door with a strange smile on his face, shook his head and stepped over the threshold. With one step, the shabby hut disappeared, and a yellow mist appeared in front of his eyes. There seemed to be a figure hiding in the mist, but the downtrodden stall owner was nowhere to be found. Luya was not panicked at all. Before he entered the house, he noticed that there was something wrong with the house. After he came in, he was ready to deal with any situation. Now it seems that there should be a formation in the house, and stepping into the house is equivalent to breaking into the formation. The yellow mist rolled, and the figure of the downtrodden stall owner gradually emerged from the yellow mist. Beside him, there were 3 male foundation building monks with strong auras. Hey, Senior is really generous. Hand over the storage bag obediently, and the 4 of us will spare your life. The downtrodden stall owner stood in the middle of the 3 foundation building monks, looking down at Luya with an arrogant look. Everyone, remember to vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338, Easily Counterattack. There were 3 foundation building cultivators, 1 in the late stage, 2 in the middle stage, and there was also a trap formation. To be honest, if this kind of lineup was intended to ambush a foundation building cultivator, it would basically be a sure thing, and the ambushed cultivator would basically have no chance of survival. This was also the reason why the downtrodden stall owner, who was only at the 4th level of key training, dared to speak to Luya in such an arrogant tone. In his opinion, this kind of thing had been done more than once or twice, and it was successful every time, so there was no reason why it would not succeed this time. Where's my arrow? Lu Yat had no idea that he was ambushed, and just calmly looked at the downtrodden cultivator opposite him and asked, "Haha, where's my arrow? Let me tell you, that's our arrow, and also our bait, specially used to lure a foundation-building senior like you who relies on your cultivation and thinks you have good eyesight, but in fact has no knowledge and strength at all." The downtrodden cultivator laughed again, and this time even the 3 foundation-building cultivators around him laughed along, looking at Lu Yat as if he was looking at a fool, or the kind of fool who didn't know that he was about to die. Lu Yat still had no reaction to the laughter of the other 4 people. He just said calmly, "I have paid all the spirit stones. Even if you don't plan to give it to me, you have to let me know whether there's the arrow or not, so that I know whether my spirit stones have been wasted." Ha ha ha, this young man must be scared silly. At this time, he still cares about the arrow he bought. A cultivator in the middle stage of foundation building laughed loudly, and really admired Lu Yat's calmness at this moment. "Let me show you, this arrow is here, and I can be a ghost after I die." The poor stall owner took out a storage bag from his waist. He stretched out his hand and patted it. A flash of light flashed, and a 3-foot-long arrow appeared in his palm. "There's really a complete arrow. You didn't lie to me about this." Lu Yat took a closer look at the arrow in the hand of the poor stall owner and sighed slightly. This calm and composed look, even the 4 people on the opposite side felt that something was wrong. The man in front of him was too calm, as if being ambushed by 3 foundation-building monks was a trivial matter to him. Something is wrong. This guy may be stalling for time. Brothers, take action. The late-stage foundation-building monk with the highest cultivation level frowned slightly, staring at Lu Yat's calm face and decisively ordered. With his order, the 2 foundation-building monks beside him suddenly turned into a wisp of yellow mist and merged into the formation, trying to use the power of the formation to attack Lu Yat. He himself took out a magic weapon that looked like a spear. As soon as he took it out, a sharp and terrifying aura suddenly emerged from the spear, and its power was really good. If it were an ordinary foundation-building monk, if he didn't have a good defensive magic weapon, he might be killed on the spot by this long spear magic weapon at the first sight. The 3 of them cooperated tacitly, and in just a moment, they formed a killing calamity against Lu Yat, the ambushed person. Facing this killing calamity that was enough to kill a late foundation-building cultivator, Lu Yat did not even raise his eyelids. He just took a step and disappeared suddenly. A trace of horror flashed across the face of the late foundation-building cultivator. His invincible spear magic weapon had clearly locked onto Lu Yat's aura, but lost this lock the moment Lu Yat took a step. This situation has never happened before. The next moment, a breeze blew, and Lu Yat was already standing side by side with the poor stall owner holding the arrow. Lu Yat slowly stretched out his hand and took the arrow from the hand of the poor stall owner who was stiff and unable to move. After confirming it again, a hint of joy flashed in his eyes, and then he put it into the storage ring. When Lu Yat put the arrow into the storage ring, the late foundation-building cultivator who was not far away reacted. In horror, he subconsciously burst out his magic power and shot it to the side. At the same time, the spear had turned the gunhead and shot towards Lu Yat. As for the 2 mid-stage foundation-building cultivators further away, they just showed up at the place where Lu Yat was originally standing. Lu Yat shook his head slightly, and then the golden elixir in his body started to work, and the golden elixir consciousness burst out in an instant. Suddenly, in the perception of several people, Lu Yat seemed like a whirlpool in the abyss, and the terrifying and suffocating pressure emanated from his body. The 4 people were stiffened by the powerful aura, and they could hardly move. After suppressing several people, Lu Yat slowly walked forward. He first walked in front of the downtrodden cultivator, took off the storage bag on his waist, and took out the single arrowhead and the bag of spirit stones that belonged to him. Then he stuffed the storage bag back into the arms of the downtrodden cultivator, grinned at him, and walked towards the location of the late-stage foundation-building cultivator. The late-stage foundation-building cultivator was full of despair at this moment, but he was unwilling to give up and continued to burst out his magic power, trying to break through Lu Yat's suppression. But unfortunately, until Lu Yat walked in front of him, he was unable to break through the suppression created by Lu Yat. Well, don't waste your efforts. This is a suppression close to the domain level. You, a late foundation-building cultivator, should not expect to break through the suppression. Seeing that he did not abandon or give up, Lu Yat advised, "Have a good rest." As Lu Yat finished speaking, the fingertips on the other party's forehead burst into a red light, and in the blink of an eye, it pierced through the other party's head. The late foundation building cultivator was shocked, and the unwillingness and regret in his eyes quickly dissipated. With a thump, he fell on his back and died. After dealing with a person with the highest cultivation, Liu Yan lost interest. He raised his hand and pointed out two life-destroying fingers, killing the two mid-foundation building cultivators, and then slowly walked back to the poor stall owner. At some point, the poor stall owner felt that he had regained control of his body. Almost instantly, his knees softened and he knelt on the ground, kowtowing like pounding garlic, and kept kowtowing to Liu Yan for mercy. Senior, I was forced to do this. I have an 80-year-old mother and a 3-year-old child. If I don't agree to them, my whole family will die. The poor stall owner kowtowed and cried loudly to explain something. Seeing this, Liu Yan just raised his hand and used invisible energy to force the stall owner to stand straight. Looking at the stall owner standing straight, Liu Yan said, "No need to explain. It's just a transaction between you and me. Look, the arrow belongs to me, and you should get your corresponding reward. But before that, I want to buy something from you." The stall owner? The poor stall owner was uneasy, but still had a glimmer of hope and said, "Senior, whatever you want to buy, as long as I have it, I can sell it to you." Liu Yan smiled slightly. "This is easy. You must have it. I'll give you a low-grade spirit stone to buy your life." After saying that, before the stall owner could refuse, a blood hole appeared in the middle of his brow. Liu Yan casually threw the bag of spirit stones onto the other person's body, and then took out a low-grade spirit stone and threw it down. After doing all this, he walked out of the dilapidated hut leisurely. Dear all, remember to vote. Chapter 339 Strange Arrows. Walking slowly out of this dilapidated shantytown, Liu Yan did not feel uncomfortable even though he was stared at by those eyes hidden in the darkness. After more than 100 years of development, the area of Changluofeng City has become quite considerable, and there are all kinds of wine shops and brothels. Liu Yan did not hide his whereabouts, but appeared in the most central restaurant in this market, opened a room, and went straight into the room. Liu Yan first checked the room inside and out with his divine sense, and then played a few formation flags to form a formation plate, and finally sat cross-legged in the room. The sword ring in his hand flashed, and the arrow and the rusty arrowhead appeared in his hand. Liu Yan looked carefully, and at first glance, whether it was an arrow or an arrowhead, it was not even as good as the lowest grade magic weapon, even if the divine sense swept it. But if you look closely, you can find a trace of special aura from this arrow. The treasure is hidden by itself, or there is a restriction blocking it. Liu Yan flicked his finger on the arrow shaft and the arrow shaft trembled continuously. At the same time, there was a kind of majestic hot air emanating from it, and there were even some starlight flickering on the arrow shaft. Just from this performance, the material of this arrow shaft is extraordinary. At least it is made from the trunk of a 4th-level spiritual plant, and countless precious materials and restrictions have been added to it, so that it can show such a strange phenomenon. Why does this hot breath feel a little familiar? Liu Yan held the arrow shaft and flicked his finger again. This time he did not just use pure physical strength, and a little beam fire exploded on the arrow shaft with his finger flick. Boom! As soon as the sun's true fire attached to the arrow shaft, the entire arrow shaft was immediately wrapped in flames and turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the contrary, the fire of the sun's true fire became weaker and weaker, and it looked as if the arrow shaft was devouring the sun's true fire. Not long after, the sun's true fire completely disappeared. On the other hand, the arrow shaft seemed to be full of flames at this moment. The whole arrow shaft was cracked. In the cracks, the golden red true fire filled in like half-solidified magma. Obviously, the burning of the sun's true fire not only did not cause any damage to the arrow shaft, but even replenished its energy, allowing its body to appear in front of Liu Yan. The majestic and grand aura became more and more condensed. When Liu Yan faced the arrow shaft, he seemed to be able to feel the shadow of an ancient tree that was thousands of feet high. The ancient tree was composed of 2 large trees that supported and entangled each other, and finally pierced the sky like a sharp sword. There were many small branches on the trunk, and pieces of fiery red leaves like burning flames were hung on these branches. From a distance, it seemed as if the crown of this huge ancient tree was burning. The majestic light red aura covered 1,000 miles with the ancient tree as the center. The area covered by the ancient tree was an independent world. This ancient tree, Liu Yan was slightly absent-minded. The majestic aura emitted by the shadow of the ancient tree really shocked him. He even had a vague guess in his heart. This guess came to his mind for no reason, Just like intuition, Lu Yu was already a person who had formed a purple gold elixir. To put it bluntly, a person at his level would not have any impulses at will. But at this moment, Lu Yu had an intuition for no reason, which also meant that the arrow in his hand had an unusual meaning to him. There are many trees with leaves like mulberry and mulberry. The tree is thousands of feet long. Two of them grow from the same root and rely on each other. It is called fusang. This sentence suddenly emerged from the depths of Lu Yu's memory, and he muttered it to himself. When he finished speaking, the absent-mindedness in his eyes had been dispersed by shock. Jianmu, he looked at the arrow in his hand and couldn't believe what he was thinking. This arrow shaft is very likely made of the branches of the fusang tree. This made Lu Yu feel unreal. The fusang tree, which is said to be the habitat of the sun, and the Jianmu tree that can reach the sky, was actually made into an arrow shaft. Thinking of this, Lu Yu fell into silence. The fusang tree, the sun true fire, and even his name, all of these made Lu Yu feel a little strange. But this feeling was only fleeting, and then Lu Yu forced it down. This question didn't mean much to him at the moment. Then he couldn't help but look at the arrowhead. The arrow shaft might be made of Jianmu, so what material was this arrowhead made of? Lu Yu did the same thing and flicked his finger to eject a beam fire. The moment the sun true fire touched the arrowhead, a faint blue cold air suddenly burst out from the arrowhead. The cold air was extremely abrupt. The moment it appeared, even the space around the arrow made a clicking sound, as if even the space was about to be frozen by this cold air. The cold air extinguished the little bit of sun true fire, but it was still going strong and even rushed towards Lu Yu. The dark blue cold air hit his face, and Lu Yu snorted coldly. The sun true fire continued to radiate from his body, forming a pillar of fire to block the dark blue ice mist in front of him. The ice mist is a tree without roots, while the sun true fire is water with a source. The two held each other for only a moment, and the sun true fire gradually gained the upper hand, pushing the ice mist back step by step until it returned to the arrow. Seeing the ice mist return to the arrow, Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief. This ice mist erupted too suddenly and was extremely powerful. It took him a lot of effort just to suppress it. But now it's good, he can be sure that neither the arrow shaft nor the arrowhead is an ordinary thing. Even if he was hit by an arrow and allowed the ice mist to explode directly in his body without knowing it, even if he had the sun true fire to protect his body and practiced a body refining technique, he would definitely not be able to resist it. After putting the arrow back into the storage ring, Lu Yu slowly breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at another arrow in his hand and fell into thought. Since there is an arrowhead, it means there is an arrow shaft, and I still have a complete arrow in my hand, which means that the number of such arrows is at least not odd, and it is very likely that there are more than two. It seems that we need to go to the ruins north of the market. Since the stall owner said that he got the arrow from there, whether it is right or wrong, it is absolutely necessary to take a look and search. Thinking of this, Lu Yu couldn't help but admire the four people before. The division of labor among the four people is indeed clear. The stall owner with the lowest cultivation is responsible for fishing, and the three foundation building monks behind are responsible for slaughtering the fish they caught and squeezing everything out of the fish, leaving nothing behind. Unfortunately, they met a top monk like Lu Yu this time. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 340 Heading to the Ruins. If it was just an ordinary cultivator, their fishing operation would have been successful again. Moreover, the four people had good eyesight. Although they might not recognize the preciousness of the arrow, it did not affect their knowledge that it was a good thing. Therefore, taking out an arrow as bait was also a natural filter. The cultivators who could not find the extraordinary arrow were directly filtered out. And all the cultivators who found the arrow extraordinary would have the same idea of picking up leaks as Lu Yu after hearing that there was still a complete arrow, and followed him to the ambush that had been set up long ago. And the stall owner of the fourth level of key training would not bring any sense of threat to people at all, which also virtually reduced some difficulties for the ambush. The result was obvious. Before this, all the cultivators who found the arrow unusual should have died in the ambush. It was not until Lu Yu's arrival that the fishing plan of the four people was completely terminated. It was terminated in the real physical sense. So, those plots and novels that you can pick up leaks of natural treasures that others have never found by strolling around the city are really unbelievable. Lu Yu couldn't help but sighed. It is hard to say that his previous behavior was not influenced by the plot of the novel in his previous life. He was a standard time traveler, and he had a certain strength and vision. In this case, It seemed natural to find some good things that others could not find. However, reality has made Liu understand that when you think you have found a bargain, you don't know that you have become a fish that swallowed a bait. Before you have time to digest the bait, you are pierced through the lower jaw by the sharp barb and become a piece of fish on someone else's chopping board, at the mercy of others. Don't have the heart to find a bargain. It's better to sell than to buy. Take it as a warning. Take it as a warning. Liu educated himself a few times, and his defensive psychology against such incidents has been raised to a red threshold area. This time, he was strong and discovered the other party's arrangement in advance. Or it doesn't matter if he didn't discover it. With his strength, he can completely defeat 10 skills with one force. But what if the next time, the fisherman's strength increases by 2 realms, and the ambushing people become 3 unyielding monks? If that time really comes, Liu will have no choice but to obediently bury his own life. After a while, Liu, who had done a good job of self-education, put away the arrow, closed his eyes and entered the state of cultivation. 2 hours later, in the most popular restaurant on the busiest street in Shangluofang City, Liu was sitting in a box by the window, tasting the local delicacies. Drinking fine wine, tasting delicacies, listening to the pedestrians and hawking coming and going, and feeling the unique atmosphere of fireworks, Liu put down the chopsticks in his hand with satisfaction. People who practice cultivation are also human beings. As human beings, they have 7 emotions and 6 desires. With a sigh, Liu walked down the stairs slowly. "Sir, please take care, come again next time." Outside the door, a waiter greeted Liu's back very enthusiastically. Until Liu walked away, he smacked his lips, reached out and unconsciously touched the clothes at his chest, until he touched the hard convex thing. And then he showed a hint of unstoppable smile. Just by answering the well-known question about the location of the ruins, he was rewarded with a medium-grade spirit stone that he had accumulated for 2 years of hard work. He actually encountered such a lucky thing. It was really unpredictable. After watching Liu walk away, the waiter came to his senses and continued his work. It was almost late at night, and the moon was bright tonight. The darkness outside the market brought depression and uneasiness. Liu was not in a hurry to leave the market at this time, but returned to the rented restaurant and continued his daily practice in the house. He practiced the skills, practiced spells, figured out spells, and practiced the skills. The whole night was spent in this pattern. Until the next day, Liu slowly withdrew from the practice. After checking his own state and making sure that his state was at its peak, Liu opened the door and walked out of the inn quickly. Afterwards, he no longer kept a low profile, and flew straight from the market, flying all the way to the north in full view of everyone. Who dares to be so bold? Don't you know that there is a rule prohibiting flying in our Shangluofang City? A young man who grew up in Shangluofang City was quite indignant when he saw Liu's arrogant behavior. An old man beside him heard this and just glared at him and shouted in a low voice, "Shut up! He is a foundation building senior. The rules are set for us Kigan cultivators. For a foundation building senior, let alone this rule, even if he kills someone in the street, the foundation building senior of the Luo family will come and weigh the opponent's strength. If the difference is not much, they may not pursue it." The young man was scolded by his elders, and immediately put away the resentment in his heart, and even retracted his gaze and looked down at the ground under his feet. Seeing that his outstanding junior seemed unable to accept this cruel fact for a while, the old man encouraged him earnestly, "You are the most talented person in our family. You have already reached the 6th level of key training at such a young age. You will be able to break through soon. Practice diligently in the future. If you can build a foundation in one fell swoop, I will have no regrets even if I die. Don't worry, Grandpa, I will definitely be able to become a high-ranking foundation-building cultivator and revitalize the family." The young man's eyes flickered again and he said seriously. Liu went all the way north. The scene on the earth was rapidly retreating, and the place he saw was becoming more and more desolate. The distance of 300 miles was not far for him now. In just a moment, Liu arrived at the ruins mentioned by the cultivator in Shangluofang City. Looking down from the sky, the ruins looked like they had been after an earthquake. There were ruins everywhere, and even some spires were exposed on the ground, with potholes corroded by wind and rain. The main body of the ruins is buried deep underground, never seeing the light. What Liu has seen so far is only a corner of the ruins. To reach the ruins, one must go through the gaps in the buildings on land and slowly move towards the ruins below. These gaps are wide and narrow, and the ruins are layered, There are many dangerous creatures living between the ruins, which makes the exploration of this ruins exponentially more difficult. Until now, the ruins that have been explored by the monks are only the 5 layers closest to the surface. There was once a warrior who regarded life as worthless, risking his own death and heading towards the depths of the ruins. As a result, after the news that the ruins had more than 7 layers was sent back, no news came out. Only a piece of empty rope full of blood proved that this warrior had been in this world. Chapter 341, Down to the Cave. According to rumors, this warrior was a real person in the Giandan realm. After this real person disappeared in this cave, the cave ruins, which were once very popular, became deserted in just a few days. First, after a long period of development and exploration, the 5 layers of the cave ruins above have been basically explored, but the number of dangerous creatures living there has not decreased much. At this time, exploring these areas will not only fail to obtain any precious treasures, but also take great risks. Secondly, because the Giandan real person fell below the cave, many monks who wanted to explore the 6th floor were discouraged, fearing that they would follow the footsteps of the Giandan real person. Luya fell from the air and stood in front of the black hole of the ruins. A cautious look appeared in his eyes. He sacrificed the unyielding spirit shield, then stepped into the gap and walked towards the cave below step by step. As Luya went deeper, the visibility of the cave was also rapidly decreasing. He only went down to the 2nd floor of the cave, and it was already dark. However, this level of darkness is not a problem for a Giandan's Henrin like Luya. Even without using lighting spells, Luya can still see the surrounding things clearly. This cave ruins is extremely huge. According to statistics from interested people, this ruins was most likely a large cultivation city with a permanent population of millions before it was buried. However, it is unknown why such a huge cultivation city was buried underground and how it was done. Hiss! In the darkness, an object suddenly shot out from the ruins, and with the cover of darkness, it rushed straight to Luya's heart like a black light. Its momentum was extremely fast. If an ordinary key cultivator was not careful, he would be hit by it. However, for this level of attack, Luya did not even think of dodging. The black light suddenly hit the unyielding spirit shield on Luya's body. The powerful impact squeezed the attacker into a pool of meat sauce on the spot, and smeared a layer of irregular paint on the spirit shield on Luya's body. Luya had encountered no less than 10 such attacks along the way. Each time, he crashed into his protective spiritual shield like a moth to a flame, and was washed away by his magic power. Luya did not stop, and walked in the ruins of the cave. He was on a street at this time. On both sides of the street were large courtyards with 3 entrances. The rigorous architectural style made these long abandoned buildings still retain a trace of the decency and dignity of their former lives. However, the main doors of these courtyards were wide open. In the darkness, they were like huge mouths that wanted to devour people, waiting for ignorant passers-by to break in. In fact, these courtyards had been explored by nearby monks a long time ago. Anything of value had already been looted. Now, perhaps only these worthless houses and buildings remained here. Trample. Trample. Luya's footsteps spread far in this deserted cave. The dead ruins were using their own way to show the arrival of uninvited guests to the creatures in the ruins. Trample. Trample. Tap. Tap. In the darkness, the originally regular footsteps suddenly echoed. Luya stopped and the footsteps disappeared. He took a step, and a footstep sound came from the bottom of his feet. Then another identical sound sounded in Luya's ears, slowly echoing in the area. It was only 1 step. But 2 footsteps were heard one after another. Luya narrowed his eyes slightly, and his consciousness quietly probed out, and began to search for the owner of the footsteps. After a few breaths, Luya's eyes became a little more serious, and his consciousness did not find anything. So he took another step forward, and 2 footsteps sounded again, one in front and one behind. The moment it sounded, Luya suddenly pointed out a finger, and the finger of extermination disappeared in the blink of an eye. At the moment the finger of extermination was shot out, Luya keenly noticed a strange fluctuation. He looked in one direction, and in 2 steps he had arrived at the place where the fluctuation came from. He saw a drop of unknown liquid dripping on a dusty stone slab. Luya did not rashly reach out to grab it, or use his spiritual sense to explore it. He just used a thin jade piece to scoop up the drop of liquid and put it in front of his eyes to observe it with his naked eyes. After observing for a while, the footsteps did not sound again, So Lu Ya put down the jade piece in his hand. He exhaled, and his heart had some expectations for the unknown existence. Because just now, he carefully checked it with his naked eyes and did not find any problems, but when he was about to use his spiritual sense to explore the internal structure of this liquid, Lu Ya was surprised to find that this drop of liquid could not be observed by his spiritual sense. In other words, the creature that possesses this drop of liquid is invisible in a sense. Especially in this dark environment, the visibility is not high, and the spiritual sense is useless. The threat of this creature hidden in the dark is far greater than that of other conventional creatures. Invisible, Lu Ya smiled slightly, and the next moment, a breeze suddenly blew through the ruins. Everything that happened in the breeze appeared in Lu Ya's mind. Finally, Lu Ya cast his eyes to the back of a stone lion, about 100 feet away from them. His spiritual sense was cast there without hesitation, but he found that there was no one behind the stone lion. Found you, Lu Ya stepped down, his figure swept like a gust of wind, and the next moment he appeared 100 feet away. His punch containing the true fire of the sun hit the back of the stone lion. This scene was too abrupt and swift. The invisible creature had no time to react, but found that his chest had been pierced. He staggered 2 steps and fell to the ground unwillingly. Lu Ya looked at the dust on the ground raised by the heavy object falling, roughly estimated the size of the monster, and then put it into the stored ring. After dealing with such a ghost, Lu Ya continued to explore in this ruined city, like a horse-drawn tour, and soon came to the entrance of the 5th floor. This ruins is too big, and there are basically no valuable treasures or clues related to giant Mu arrows on the first 4 floors. Fortunately, Lu Ya found the nearest cave directly and headed down without any delay. Tick-tick, the crisp ticking sound began to ring in Lu Ya's ears as he stepped onto the 5th floor. It has no killing power, but this continuous ticking sound is really frightening, especially in such a dim place. Lu Ya had a blank expression on his face, but he just opened his mouth and spit out a beam fire. Then Lu Ya continued to infuse his magic power. And the point of the sun's true fire became a fireball the size of a human head in a few breaths. The orange-red light emanated from it, forcibly dispelling the dense darkness around him. Lu Ya moved his mind, and the fireball slowly flew to a position about 2 feet above his head, clearly showing everything within a range of 20 feet around him. The 5th floor of the cave is the limit that the monks nearby can reach. According to the information Lu Ya obtained, the area of the 5th floor is nearly half that of the 1st floor, and there are fewer buildings in it, but there are more creatures active in it, and each of them is quite powerful. In the past, the monks who came to the 5th floor had a monster distribution map in hand, and they would not provoke these monsters if they could. Usually these creatures stay in their own territories, which may not be large, but as long as there are places guarded by these creatures, there must be precious treasures, perhaps magic tools, perhaps a medicinal garden, or perhaps the Taoist scripture, and so on. There are also monks who have organized monks before, trying to gather everyone's strength to defeat them one by one, so as to clean up the 5th floor. However, after being besieged by the monsters on the entire 5th floor, when the 3 people who escaped by chance brought the information of cannot gather to the outside world, many monks who were ready to fight stopped. At this time, due to Lu Ya's behavior, an artificial sun rose slowly on the 5th floor of the dark cave, and the light emitted by Lu Ya could be seen from a long distance. But soon, when Lu Ya saw the surrounding environment clearly, the artificial sun suddenly shattered and dissipated, and the place returned to darkness. Although it was only a few breaths, Lu Ya had already reflected everything around him in his heart. In the distance, there was a vague upside-down tower standing on the 5th floor. It was the most conspicuous symbol of the 5th floor of the cave. Through the upside-down tower, one could determine the approximate location of oneself. There was only one entrance to the 6th floor, which was the top of the tower. It was a pity that the foundation building monks who ambushed him before did not tell him the specific location of the arrows, otherwise Lu Ya could go straight to the target place, instead of having to use the stupid method like now, and carefully explore the 5 floors first. As Lu Ya walked, his spiritual sense continued to explore, searching from the outermost circle to the center. As long as the monsters he encountered were blind, Lu Ya would not mind turning them into fertilizer, and occasionally he could harvest some treasures that he had never seen before. For 4 days, Lu Ya explored the entire 5th floor of the cave, but he did not find even a single arrow. He did harvest some spiritual materials and medicines. During this period, he also met several teams of monks who ventured to the 5th floor. Lu Ye had a brief exchange with him and killed a team of monks who had ill intentions towards him. During the exchange, Lu Ye learned that a few days before his arrival, several monks who were suspected to be Jinden went straight to the inverted tower, as if they wanted to use the tower to go to the 6th floor of the cave. After learning this news, Lu Ye did not delay any longer and silently accelerated the pace of advancement. Until today, Lu Ye finally set foot within 1,000 feet of the inverted tower. As soon as he stepped into the 1,000-foot range of the inverted tower, Lu Ye's divine sense was immediately bounced back, and he was slightly surprised. What is the origin of this inverted tower? It actually set up a ban that prohibits divine sense exploration 1,000 feet away. Generally speaking, this kind of ban usually appears in the core area of the sect to protect important information and assets. However, this inverted tower has been set up with such restrictions within 1,000 feet. This alone is a huge and time-consuming project. When Lu Ye stepped into the 1,000 feet of the inverted tower, he found that the monsters that seemed to be everywhere before had disappeared here. Lu Ye walked towards the inverted tower, cautiously all the way, but did not encounter any risks. Until he arrived at the tower. Lu Ye looked up at the tower in front of him. It was shaped like an inverted bamboo shoot, with a pointed bottom and a wide top. The widest part was exactly 100 feet wide, decreasing layer by layer. When it reached Lu Ye's feet, it was less than 10 feet wide. If they wanted to enter the 6th floor of the cave, they had to fly to the base of the tower, enter the tower from the entrance there, and then enter the 6th floor of the cave. Lu Ye first went forward and touched the tower. The tower was pitch black, and there were a lot of uneven knots on the surface. The building materials looked like gold, not wood. Lu Ye flicked his fingers, and the tower wall in front of him actually made a sound of metal clashing. The building materials alone were a huge expense. Lu Ye did not hesitate, and his body rose up, and soon he rose to a height of more than 5 floors, but he was still more than half the distance from the bottom of the tower, as if the tower and the cave were not on the same space. This made Lu Ye realize that the tower was more mysterious than he had imagined. After flying up for a while, Lu Ye finally saw the entrance of the tower. The entrance of the tower was closed, but the deposited dust showed some signs of being moved. Obviously, this was what the monks he met before said, that someone had come here in advance. Lu Ye put his palm on the door and pushed it hard, trying to push the door open. But this time his judgment was obviously wrong. As he pushed the door, the heavy and solid door was pushed open by Lu Ye. Lu Ye was stunned for a moment, then walked into the tower. The first thing he saw was an empty hall. The various tables and chairs in the hall were now scattered, but the strange thing was that these tables and chairs should have been on the ceiling, but now they were all hanging upside down on the ground. Even Lu Ye himself could see that he was standing on the floor, with the ceiling hanging upside down above his head. The rapid switching of space made Lu Ye a little dizzy. Lu Ye raised his head and looked at the tower. Then he saw that on the inner wall of the tower, there were circles of stairs winding upwards, all the way into the darkness. The stairs were weathered, and were covered with various forbidden spiritual patterns, arranged step by step in a rectangular shape. Lu Ye glanced at them, and without hesitation, he stepped onto the stairs and began to walk up. Winding up the stairs in circles, after walking for a long time, Lu Ye finally reached the end of the tower. At the end of this tall tower, there is not a dark hole leading directly to the 6th floor of the cave, but an octagonal ancient teleportation array. There are few cracks on the surface of the teleportation array, but it does not seem to affect its use. On the teleportation array, there are 8 high-quality spirit stones placed in the grooves of the teleportation array to provide energy for the teleportation array. Chapter 342, Kingfisher in the Forest. Lu Ye looked around and saw some traces around. It was obvious that the Jinden's Henren who came before him did not have too many concerns about their own whereabouts. Lu Ye touched the teleportation array with his fingers, feeling the fluctuations of spiritual power emanating from it, and then he stood directly on the teleportation array, and his spiritual consciousness slightly moved the control array plate outside the teleportation array. As the teleportation array was opened, the light emitted by the 8 top-grade spiritual stones began to dim, and the spiritual energy in the spiritual stones was constantly absorbed by the teleportation array. The next moment, a flash of light passed, and Lu Ye had disappeared from the teleportation array. A slight feeling of dizziness came, and even a being of Lu Ye's realm could not resist it. However, the dizziness came quickly and went away quickly. Lu Ye just shook his head and threw the uncomfortable dizziness out of his mind. Chirp! A crisp and loud chirping sound came from above his head. Luya suddenly looked up and saw towering trees, twisted trunks supporting each other, and leaves that looked like burning flames. Under the cover of leaves, the emerald green bird was looking down at the place where Luya was standing, and from time to time it made one or two clear calls. Luya did not expect that after he arrived at the so-called 6th floor of the cave, the first thing he saw was a huge primeval forest. This gave him a rather absurd feeling. It was bare deep underground and dark before, but now it was full of birdsong and flowers, full of vitality. Luya once again painted himself with a layer of protective shield. If the 6th floor of the cave was still dark, he might not be so cautious, but the scene at this time was too abnormal. Luya released his spiritual sense and slowly spread it around. Everything around him was slowly reflected in his heart. Not long after, Luya retracted his spiritual sense and only maintained it within a range of 5 feet. He had just explored the area around him for 100 feet, but found that except for the emerald green bird above his head, there was no living creature within 100 feet. Such an abnormal scene made Luya couldn't help but look up and carefully observe the emerald green bird between the branches above his head. Perhaps it noticed Luya's gaze. The emerald green bird stopped singing at this moment, and also tilted its head to look at Luya, and occasionally combed the feathers on its chest with its tender yellow beak. Luya finished watching it, but didn't find anything wrong. After thinking for a while, he suddenly flew into the air and slowly approached the emerald green bird. As he approached, the emerald green bird combed its feathers less and less, and looked at Luya for longer and longer. The next moment, it flapped its wings violently and was about to fly from the branch. The moment it left the branch, Luya's face suddenly changed, because he found that this emerald green bird, which looked only the size of a palm, had 3 legs under its feathers. Golden crow. Luya was shocked, and the next moment he didn't hesitate at all, turning into a residual shadow and rushing towards the emerald green bird with 3 legs. Seeing this, the emerald bird let out a frightened cry, flapped its wings vigorously, and disappeared in an instant at a speed that could not be captured by the naked eye. Luya stood on the empty tree trunk, and the next moment he turned into a rainbow light and chased in the direction where the emerald bird disappeared. In Luya's eyes, the importance of this 3-legged bird was no less than the giant mu arrow he had obtained, and even more. You should know that in the myths that Luya knew, there were only 3 kinds of birds with 3 legs. One was Churu with a white head and a human face, one was Suanyu with 416 eyes and a 3-legged body like a snake, and the last one was the 3-legged golden crow. The appearance of this emerald bird was obviously far from Churu and Suanyu, and it appeared in the cave where the giant mu arrow was found. In this way, people had to think of the legendary 3-legged golden crow. Moreover, the speed shown by this emerald bird undoubtedly confirmed this conjecture. It was just a palm-sized bird, but its speed was so fast that even Luya couldn't catch up. Luya chased for only a few dozen breaths, but he could no longer see the trace of the 3-legged kingfisher, so he had no choice but to stop. In just a few dozen breaths, Luya had chased for nearly 100 miles, which shows how fast this 3-legged kingfisher really is. Luya stopped on an ancient tree, looking at the 3-legged kingfisher that had disappeared into the sky. His expression was quite excited. If I can learn this kind of extreme speed, from now on, I will really be able to travel to the North Sea in the morning and Kangwoo in the evening, with a green snake in my sleeve and a bold heart. Luya had never seen such a terrifying speed before. This speed was not the kind of speed that penetrated space or teleported, but the extreme speed that was actually burst out by itself. In other words, this speed can be burst out at any time and in any environment. From this point of view, this kind of extreme speed is already inherently invincible. With such extreme speed, the initiative of attack and defense will be firmly in his own hands. If you can beat them, fight them. If you can't beat them, run away. It's that simple. Luya slowed down for a moment, allowing the surging mana in his body to calm down again. In the process, he did not waste time and observed the surrounding environment again. But unfortunately, he was still in this dense forest, and what was worse was that there was no living creature around him. This meant that this dense forest might have become an ominous dead area, and no creature was willing to live here, or all the creatures in this dense forest could not escape the end of death. Luya fell to the ground, and his consciousness explored the thick layer of humus on the ground. He passed through the humus covering the surface and went deep into the soil. Luya did not find any remains of any creatures. This also made Luya understand that the horror of this dense forest might be much higher than he imagined. Without hesitation, Lu Ye turned into rainbow light again, soared into the sky, and rushed towards the sky. It is not advisable to stay here for long. The three-legged kingfisher can stay here because its speed is enough to support it to walk on most dangerous places as if it were flat ground. However, Lu Ye thought that his speed was far from reaching that of the three-legged kingfisher. Facing the possible threats in this dense forest, the only way was to stay away from this dense forest before the danger was completely revealed to him. The moment Lu Ye broke through the dense forest and reached the sky above the sea of forests, a speechless great terror exploded from the bottom of his heart. He turned his head to look at the sea of forests below. In his perception, the originally vibrant sea of forests actually exuded a strong breath of death. It felt like the vitality of the entire sea of forests had been extinct for a long time. The transition from life to death gave birth to a great terror with an incomparable desire for survival. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 343 Kingfisher points the way. That kind of terror became real in a short moment. Lu Ye could even feel that the forest below had formed a huge mouth like an abyss, swallowing him. A great attraction acted on his body and soul. The moment he came into contact with the suction, Lu Ye felt his soul lighten and was about to leave his body and go to the huge mouth that only existed in his perception. The next moment, Lu Ye's eyes condensed, and the three-colored lotus on his soul began to sink, offsetting the suction while also fixing Lu Ye's soul firmly in his body. After getting rid of the suction, Lu Ye came to his senses and burst out with a wind escape. His body turned into a gust of wind and flew away in an instant. He flew over the forest, and the suction from the forest never stopped, and it became stronger and stronger as time went by. Moreover, even the dark sky above became a little darker, and the same suction also pressed down on Lu Ye from the sky. At this moment, Lu Ye finally understood why the sky above the dense forest was so dark. This sky was not the sky at all. It was clearly the same source as the great terror in the forest. In other words, this sky had long been polluted and assimilated into the great terror of life. Lu Ye sensed the threat from the sky and the ground. He shook his body again and rushed out again. The magic power burst out from his body more violently, and his speed was also increased in this situation. However, even though Lu Ye had exerted his speed to the limit, he could still see the endless forest, with no end in sight. The sky was getting lower and lower, and the suction force was getting more and more terrifying. It was so terrifying that even the three-colored lotus in Lu Ye's soul was no longer stable and began to tremble gradually. In this case, it would probably only take a short moment for the suction force of the sky and the earth to converge. At that time, it would be like two completely closed doors, and Lu Ye would become a turtle in a jar, with nowhere to escape. Theoretically, unless Lu Ye could fly across the forest in a short time, or increase his speed again, he would not be able to escape no matter how hard he resisted. However, Lu Ye could not do the latter of these two methods. The speed he showed at the moment was already his current limit. Even though his meridians were already tingling due to the surge of mana, he could not increase his speed even a little bit. The former was equally difficult. The rules of this forest were different from what Lu Ye was familiar with, and there was also that kind of terrifying suction that interfered with his soul, making it impossible for Lu Ye to release his consciousness to explore the surroundings and find the correct way to fly across the forest. Therefore, he could only rush forward with his head down, and there was nothing else he could do. But no matter how he flew, the forest in front of him was still endless. Soon, the three-colored lotus in Lu Ye's soul could no longer resist the terrifying suction, and his soul began to turbulent again, and there were overlapping phantoms in front of his eyes and perception, making Lu Ye's flight trajectory messy. Suddenly, among the overlapping phantoms, a touch of emerald green jumped into Lu Ye's vision. Lu Ye tried hard to concentrate, and saw that the three-legged kingfisher had appeared not far in front of him, flapping its wings wildly, and its small face covered with tender green fur was full of anxiety. Seeing Lu Ye looking at it, it first chirped twice, then turned and flew several feet in one direction, then turned back and flapped its wings at Lu Ye. Lu Ye's mind turned quickly, and he didn't care what it meant. He thought that this three-legged kingfisher could shuttle through this sea of forests, and there must be a way to survive. So he adjusted the direction and flew in the direction of the three-legged kingfisher with all his strength. Seeing that Lu Ye understood what he meant, the three-legged kingfisher excitedly called twice, turned into a green rainbow and appeared in front of Lu Ye, and kept a distance of about 10 feet, leading the way in front of Lu Ye. Seeing this, Lu Ye already understood the other party's intention in his heart. At the moment, He tried to stabilize his soul and follow the other party to shuttle through the sea of forests. With a forward charge, the green rainbow in front of Luya's eyes disappeared instantly. Before Luya could react, he felt himself crashing into a ball of translucent glue-like liquid. This feeling only lasted for a moment, and the next moment, Luya had already escaped from this feeling. A warm feeling enveloped Luya, and the terrifying suction had disappeared. Luya stabilized his body and looked forward, and saw a green rainbow appear 10 feet away from him. From Luya's point of view, the three-legged kingfisher chirped twice, and before Luya could make any move, it had turned into a green rainbow and disappeared from Luya's sight. It was not until the other party disappeared from his sight again that Luya withdrew his gaze with some regret. The speed of this three-legged kingfisher was so fast that he didn't even have time to say thank you. Luya turned his head and looked behind him, only to see a large area of vibrant trees behind him, quiet and peaceful, without feeling the suffocating and terrifying suction before. Luya subconsciously stepped back a few steps and began to observe his current environment. He looked up at the sky. He saw two mountain ranges standing on both sides. The mountains were extremely high, steep and huge. Even though he was in the valley, Luya still had the illusion that he was in a vast plain. Because of these two mountains that towered into the clouds, the sky seemed like a long river, showing in front of Luya. There was no sun in the sky, but the light was shining on Luya as usual. Seeing this scene, Luya's mind was inexplicably associated with a place named Tangu. It's really a mysterious thing, Luya muttered to himself, as if he had a new understanding of this world. The stories and places that once existed in mythology now appear in another world. The meaning of this is enough to make anyone who has experienced this fall into silence. After standing there for a cup of tea, Luya finally came back to his senses. When he looked around again, his eyes were no longer full of doubts, but he walked forward firmly. Originally, his goal was just to take a look at the ruins of the cave and explore it, but now he no longer thought so. Such a familiar scene made him unable to ignore it. He wanted to know more, to understand more clearly, and to get more. As he walked forward, he sensed the surrounding environment. Compared with the forest behind him, this place was very normal. Tiny leaves rolled in the mud, and the air was filled with a real breath of life, which was a strong smell of feces mixed with various smells. A little bit drunk. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 344 Hibiscus Fruit. Fortunately, after Luya walked for a while, the unbearable smell gradually faded. Luya walked in the valley, but he couldn't help thinking. He walked all the way from the first floor of the cave to the 6th floor of the cave. If you look at it upside down, the ruins of the cave look like a collapsed cultivation city. The first 5 floors are the main body, and the 6th floor of the cave above the high tower is a paradise. What remains is what Luya knows as Tangu. I just don't know if there will be a 7th floor in this ruins, and what will be after the 7th floor. If this cultivation city has not collapsed, it should be a famous city known to all, but why does no one know the origin of this city? Luya thought while walking, and unknowingly found that there were some traces of ruins on the road in front of him. There is a discovery. Luya was shocked, and then quickened his pace and began to walk towards the direction where the ruins appeared. Not long after, the ruins that Luya encountered on the road gradually increased, became more and more dense, and became larger and larger. Finally, Luya was completely surrounded by ruins. The ruins left behind by the collapse of the magnificent buildings were all in front, behind, left and right. Luya carefully observed these buildings. On the outer walls and beams of the buildings, he could see some exquisite carvings. From the patterns, it can be seen that the past of this ruin must have been extremely brilliant. There was no trace of life in the ruins. Luya slightly released his spiritual sense and searched in the ruins. Soon, his eyes lit up and he came to a half-collapsed palace. The upper part of the palace had disappeared without a trace, and the lower part had all fallen to one side. Luya passed between 2 thick beams and entered the palace. The interior of the palace was also a world of ruins, but Luya saw at a glance that in a corner of the palace that had not been completely buried, there were some shelves dumped on the ground. This kind of shelf is black all over, even if it is unknown how many years have passed, it is still black and shiny, and has not decayed due to the power of time. Seeing this, Luya cleared all the obstacles along the way and opened the way to the shelf. Although he knew that after so long, even if there were treasures on the shelf, they would have turned into waste after a long time, but Luya didn't care about that. Compared to the lost treasures, Luya hoped to find books and other things that recorded the history of this city. Liu carefully searched among the overturned shelves for a long time, and finally had to give up. It was not that he didn't find anything, but the things he found seemed intact, but the moment Liu picked them up, they would turn into ashes and dissipate in the air. This made Liu feel quite depressed. It was really uncomfortable to have found some clues, but he could only watch the clues being annihilated by the power of time. Another sealed book turned into ashes the moment Liu touched it, and disappeared under Liu's fingertips. Liu had to get up and give up the plan to search in his palace. After coming out of the palace, Liu sped up and quickly shuttled between the ruins of the city. But after searching for more than an hour, he still found nothing. In desperation, Liu had to give up the idea of continuing the search and flew towards the center of the ruins. On the way, Liu still had some regrets. As a cultivator, his methods were still a little lacking. If he had a technique to look for dragons by looking at key, he might not be running around like a headless ant in this ruins. After I get out of this ruins, I must find a technique to look for treasures by looking at key, so that I won't go into Treasure Mountain empty-handed and have no idea where to start, Liu said silently in his heart, and at the same time, he firmly remembered this matter on the jade slip. Although there was no life in this ruins, Liu flew carefully all the way. It was undoubtedly a risky move to fly high in an unknown environment, but compared to walking endlessly in the ruins, this risk was worth taking. Fortunately, until Liu arrived at the most central area of the city, he had not encountered any life, let alone any danger. As expected, there was no valuable information in the center of the city. However, Liu did find many carvings on the walls of some relatively intact buildings. Some carvings were purely for artistic purposes, while others still revealed traces of spiritual stone reactions. Liu guessed that these carvings should play a role in reinforcing the wall. Liu stopped in front of a complete wall. He looked up and looked at the 10-foot-high wall in front of him. On the high wall, there were abstract murals. Liu gradually looked up from the corner of the wall. At the bottom of the high wall was a vast lake. Behind the lake, there were two towering mountains as a background. And in the center of the mural was a small, weak tree in the center of the lake. This was all the content of the first mural. Liu thought for a moment, and then looked at the second mural. In the second mural, the center was still the same small tree, but compared to the first mural, this small tree had grown a lot, and even in this vast lake, it could occupy a place. In the third painting, the small tree in the mural has grown into a towering tree, and at this moment, the specific shape of the tree also vividly appeared in front of Liu. It is a tree that supports each other, which is the so-called fusang. Liu continued to look at the fourth, fifth and eighth paintings. There was only one protagonist in the mural, the fusang tree, but now the fusang tree is growing taller and taller. In the eighth painting, it has grown taller than the mountains in the distance, and its canopy is even larger than the big lake below. The seedlings that were once seedlings finally grew into a towering tree that seemed to connect the sky and the earth. Just when Liu thought that these murals described the growth history of this fusang tree, new changes appeared in the murals. In the 10th mural, the giant tree that connected the sky and the earth welcomed a guest. It was a fiery red sun, and behind the sun seemed to be a flying bird. The sun slowly approached the giant tree, as if it had received the permission of the giant tree, and finally the sun fell on a thick branch of the giant tree, like a big red lantern hanging on the giant tree. Then, one sun after another was hung on the giant tree, until there were 10 suns. Liu was excited. If he followed the direction of the mural, this place was clear enough. It was the legendary Tengu, and this giant tree was the legendary fusang tree, and those suns were transformed from the three-legged golden crow. The next few murals showed that every day, a sun would fly away from the giant tree, patrol the sky, and then return to the giant tree. Then another sun would take over the previous sun and patrol the sky. When the sun went out for patrol, the three-legged golden crow, the divine bird among the remaining 9 suns, flew out from the sun, played and frolicked on the giant tree, and lived a carefree life. Until the last mural. Liu's eyes showed a trance, as if he couldn't believe it. In the mural, the vast lake dried up, revealing the cracked lake bed at the bottom of the lake, and the huge mountain range that reached the sky was broken in the middle. The fusang sacred tree with 10 suns hanging on it fell on the earth, and the 10 suns were nowhere to be found. Everything was a desolate and dilapidated scene. In the center of the picture, there was a simple drawing of a god and demon creature. It had 4 arms, a huge body, and horns on its head. Its hands were in a holding position, and in its palm was a round fruit. Obviously, The dilapidated scene of Tengu was caused by this terrifying god and demon, and its purpose was the fruit in its palm. At the moment of seeing the fruit, a term automatically emerged in Liu Ya's mind, Fusang fruit. This is the name of this fruit, which is also the fruit produced by the Fusang sacred tree. This feeling was very strange. Clearly, the mural only showed a round, black sketch. Clearly, Liu Ya did not recognize the fruit in the painting. However, after seeing the fruit, its name appeared in Liu Ya's mind. Liu Ya took a deep breath. He had read in an ancient book that some natural divine objects contained the Great Dao. The Great Dao had a name, and this treasure had a name. Anyone who saw the treasure would automatically know its name. This meant that the Fusang fruit naturally contained the Great Dao. Under the manifestation of the Great Dao, any creature that saw its appearance would automatically have its name in their mind. And how rare things containing the Great Dao are, it can be judged by the fact that the cultivation world has never heard of such a treasure. So, this godlike existence destroyed Tengu just for this Fusang fruit? Even the Fusang sacred tree itself and the 10 sons are not its opponents. Liu Ya's heart trembled, and he shifted his sight from the body of the godlike existence on the mural. Who knows what special magical powers a god-demon level existence would have? A fruit containing the Great Dao alone would be so magical, so an existence of this level would be even more exaggerated. If Liu Ya looked at the other party for a few more times, the other party would come directly to him according to his induction, and then crush him to death like a bug. After removing the picture from his mind, Liu Ya looked at the plain again, which was no longer as peaceful as before. According to the mural, this place was originally a large swamp, and it became the plain today after the swamp dried up. If this plain is all a swamp, everything in this mural is really terrifying. During the period, the Fusang sacred tree, at its peak, regarded the entire swamp as its source of nutrients, and its roots almost covered the entire swamp. And the 2 mountain ranges are as high as the sky. And the most important thing is that this kind of mountain range was actually broken in the middle by the blow. It is really terrifying to think about it carefully. However, if it is as described in the mural, there should be some debris after the Fusang sacred tree fell. Why is there no trace of the Fusang sacred tree in the lake bed? Liu Ya thought to himself. Then, he turned around and looked behind him indifferently. In the ruins far behind him, several people were flying towards Liu Ya's location with rainbow lights. Judging from their behavior, it was obvious that they had discovered Liu Ya. Everyone, remember to vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Weird Reasons. It was too late to hide his tracks at this time. Besides, Liu Ya also wanted to see what purpose these giants had in coming to this ruin. Therefore, he stood still and did not move a step, just calmly watching the giants flying in front of him. When they were still dozens of feet away from Liu Ya, they slowly landed. This is also a common rule among cultivators. Keeping a sufficient distance means that the safety of oneself and the other party can be guaranteed, which is usually a sign of goodwill. Liu Ya looked at the 5 people opposite, 3 men and 2 women, all of whom were cultivators in the giant realm. Among them, the man and woman walking side by side in the front had the highest cultivation level, and the fluctuations of their cultivation level in the late giant period were not concealed at all. As these 5 people walked over, they also held a cautious attitude towards Liu Ya. They did not quite understand why Liu Ya, who was obviously only a cultivator in the early giant period, and there was only one person here, could still remain so calm in the face of the 5 giant cultivators who had higher cultivation levels than him. With this idea in mind, the 5 people gradually walked to a position less than 5 feet in front of Liu Ya. The male cultivator in the late giant stage, who was walking in the front, took a step forward, with a smile as warm as spring breeze on his face. He bowed to Liu Ya and said, "My name is Mr. Zuanayu, nice to meet you, fellow Taoist." Then, Mr. Zuanayu introduced, "This is Fei Yulong, and these 3 are also my friends. I invited them to explore this cave ruins together." Hearing this, Liu Ya just nodded without showing much emotion, and said briefly, "My name is Wang Tang, nice to meet you, fellow Taoists." After that, Liu Ya said no more, and the atmosphere was about to fall into awkwardness. However, Zuanayu Layman was obviously not an ordinary person. Facing Liu Ya's cold reply, he continued, "I am late, mainly because there is an old demon who has lost his mind blocking the way behind us. If you want to continue exploring the ruins, you must be careful in that direction and don't be entangled by the old demon. Others can share the information they have learned, which is a kind of goodwill. Regardless of whether the information is true or false, and whether the matter is true or false, at least both parties do not want to tear their faces at this moment. So Lu Yan nodded and said, I just arrived here, and I have not found anything about this ruin so far. The only useful information is the mural wall behind me, which seems to record the origin of this ruins. After speaking, Lu Yan walked a distance to the side and gave up the position that is most suitable for observing the murals. In fact, Zuanayu Layman and his friends had already noticed the mural wall behind Lu Yan, especially the simple drawings on it, which made them very curious. At this moment, Lu Yan was so tactful to give up his position, and they did not act pretentiously. They all stepped forward and carefully examined the murals. The Zuanayu Layman only glanced at the mural, then leaned towards Lu Yan again, and said earnestly, Friend Wang, it is rumored that a Jinden's Henren once died in this relic, and the danger must be great. I wonder if you are interested in exploring this relic with us, so that we can take care of each other. Lu Yan was not sure of the other party's thoughts, but he would never join someone else's team. On the one hand, he was used to being alone, and on the other hand, the five of them had known each other for a long time. At this moment, as a latecomer, it was not easy for him to integrate into this team, not to mention that they were still in the relic at the moment, and they were more like competitors, which was even more inappropriate. So Lu Yan shook his head and declined the other party's proposal. Seeing this, Zuanayu Layman did not mention it again, and changed the subject. The first 5 layers of the ruins are dark and dim, but I didn't expect that the 6th layer of the ruins would be such a paradise with birds singing and flowers blooming. It was quite beyond my expectation. After saying that, he turned his head to look at the fairy Yulong who was traveling with him, with a hint of doting in his eyes. Seeing this, Lu Yan immediately had some guesses about the other party's purpose of exploring this ruins, and even his eyes were a little meaningful. Indeed, after reading the mural records, I think this ruins is indeed mysterious. Lu Yan looked at Zuanayu Layman and said, If so, I am somewhat interested. Zuanayu laughed and said easily, I think fellow Taoists should have seen that I am not here for this purpose. You don't need to be so distant. It's just that Yulong has been a little bored recently, so I want to take her out to relax. His words are quite credible, and Lu Yan also quite agrees. If the other party really came here for the purpose of exploring the ruins, then when he saw him before, it was the best time to take action. However, Lu Yan was a little speechless about the other party's brain circuit. If you want to pick up girls, you can take her to a place with beautiful mountains and rivers. Why come to this cave? Do you want to imitate a haunted house and create physical contact? But the other party is also a Jinden's Henren. Isn't your intention a little too idealistic? However, since the other party can explain it openly, Lu Yan can't put on an attitude of keeping people away. He glanced at the fairy Yulong who was still immersed in the mural. The other party had a curvy figure and a fury-like face. She was indeed a proper fairy. Then he looked at Taoist Zuanayu and said bluntly, I see that Taoist Zuanayu and fairy Yulong have similar temperaments. I think the two of them should be Taoist couples, right? Such straightforward words really sounded very pleasant to Taoist Zuanayu's ears. A smile appeared on his face, but he still shook his head gently, saying with a hint of distress, My father and Yulong's father are old friends. We grew up together and practiced together in the sect. Now 100 years have passed. Although we are not Taoist couples, we are not far away. Lu Yan nodded when he heard this. He understood this. They are more than friends, but less than lovers. But according to what he said, 100 years have passed. No matter how long distance the relationship is, it must have come to fruition. Fortunately, this is in the world of cultivation. If it were in the mortal world, I'm afraid it would be time to consider whether to bury them together. Lu Yan's mind turned, and he said, I see, I once heard from a friend that if a fairy keeps an appointment, there shouldn't be any problem. I guess it's a similar situation for you and fairy Yulong, so there shouldn't be any problem either. There shouldn't be any problem. Zuanayu seemed a little excited, and asked quickly, Can you tell me the details? Lu Yan smiled slightly, and said in the tone of a relationship mentor, My friend just said that in this situation, there is only a thin layer of window paper between the two of them. As long as there is no disgust, there can be some physical contact, and the matter will be considered a success. The most important thing is to dare to take this step. Chapter 346, Moonlight sound transmission node. So that's it. Zuan Yu suddenly realized, today, I heard from Taoist Wang, which is better than thousands of words from others. If this is accomplished, I will invite Taoist Wang to be a witness when Yulong and I become Taoists. Lu Yan nodded slightly, without saying anything, but he smiled in his heart. It hasn't even started yet, and I have already thought about the time of marriage. Have you even chosen the name of the child? After Zuan Yu finished speaking, he took out a jade talisman from the storage ring and said, Brother Wang, we are all from Chen-Yu Immortal Sect and Chen-Ho Domain. This is my Yuhua transmission node. This Yuhua transmission node can transmit sound to each other as long as there is moonlight shining, even if it is thousands of miles apart. In the future, if Brother Wang passes by my sect, just tell me my name, and I will definitely take Brother Wang for a good tour. Hearing this, Lu Ye reached out to take the jade talisman handed over by Zuan Yu, and put it in his hand to observe carefully. The jade talisman is as white as the moon. If you look closely, you can see a cloud-like seal script carved on it. The workmanship is quite exquisite. This sound transmission talisman actually has such an effect. Lu Ye was surprised at first, then looked at Zuan Yu and asked, Dao Zuan Yu, I have never heard of this magical sound transmission talisman before. I wonder if this kind of sound transmission talisman is for sale. In Lu Ye's view, this is equivalent to a telephone. The moon is the signal base station. If you can buy it, you have to buy some for backup. However, after hearing what Lu Ye said, Taoist Zuan Yu shook his head helplessly and said, I am sorry to disappoint you, brother. This moonlight sound transmission talisman is unique to my Chen-Yu Immortal Sect. When using it, one must practice the unique skills of our sect. Even the sound transmission talisman I gave to Brother Wang contains some moonlight power. Normally, sound transmission requires the consumption of moonlight power, so that's it. Lu Ye nodded, showing his understanding. If there were no restrictions on the use of this kind of sound transmission talisman, the cultivation world would have been as prosperous as in the past, and there would be no such information blockage as it is now. Thank you very much, fellow Taoist. Lu Ye put the sound transmission talisman into his storage bag and bowed his hands with a smile. Seeing this, Zuan Yu layman also smiled and nodded. While the two were talking, the other four people had already looked at the mural and had recovered from the shock. Fusang fruit. There is such a magical thing. In addition to Fairy Yulong, there was also a female giant and cultivator in the team. She was a cute girl with a baby face and a height of about 1.5 meters. At this moment, she was muttering in a shocked tone. That's right. If I get this Fusang fruit, wouldn't it be a step to heaven and achieve Mahayana? Another male cultivator in the middle stage of giant and couldn't help but start to fantasize. Don't think about it. It's impossible. Don't you see that this Fusang fruit has fallen into the hands of that terrifying existence? The last male cultivator said. Can't we just think about it? Said the male cultivator who spoke earlier. What Fusang fruit? How come I don't know what Yulong and the others are talking about? Hearing the voice, Zuan Yu asked Fairy Yulong as he walked towards the team. Upon hearing this, Fairy Yulong smiled slightly, and then opened her red lips slightly. Brother, they saw the divine objects on the murals, and now they are a little overwhelmed. Oh, Zuan Yu was slightly surprised, walked to Yulong, stood side by side with her, and said, I don't know which mural it is. Yulong, can you point it out to me? Yulong first glanced at their shoulders that were slightly touching, feeling the warmth from their shoulders, and a graceful arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. Then she raised her hand and pointed to the mural at the top. That's it, this kid learns very quickly. Lu Ye looked at the two people standing together, and couldn't help but secretly said in his heart, he has talent. The other three looked at Zuan Yu and Yulong, looking at each other, looking like they were watching a show and eating melons. Seeing this, Lu Ye did not intend to stay here, so he turned around and walked out of the ruins. Zuan Yu was so excited at the moment that he was absent-minded even when looking at the murals of Fusang fruit. After just a few glances, he cast his eyes on Yulong, who is close to him. He found that at this distance, Yulong seemed to be much more beautiful. Yulong was a little flustered by his unconcealed gaze, and her round and smooth earlobes turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. She hurriedly said, Brother, it seems that Wang Dao is leaving. Zuan Yu withdrew his gaze with a little regret, and followed Yulong's line of sight, and saw his mentor Lu Ye walking out. Well, Dao, we will not disturb you from exploring the ruins, and we will keep in touch in the future, Zuan Yu shouted loudly, but he did not move a step. and still kept his shoulder close to Yulong. Lu Yue did not turn his head back, but just waved his hand, then set up a rainbow light and disappeared from everyone's sight. 3 days later, Lu Yue no longer knew how far he had traveled. The endless lake bed and the long strip of sky were still in his sight, as if nothing had changed. During these 3 days, Lu Yue saw the three-legged kingfisher again, but this time he saw a green rainbow passing by in the sky from a distance, and it disappeared in an instant. Lu Yue did not react to this. The three-legged kingfisher saved his life, and he never had any bad intentions. He just hurried on his way in silence. Because Lu Yue learned from the previous mural that the location he was in before should belong to the outermost part of Tengu, whether it was the Fusang sacred tree or the golden crow, they were all in the innermost part of Tengu. Lu Yue firmly believed that as long as he walked in, he would eventually be able to find some useful information. After several days, the unchanging sky and lake bed finally had a slight change. Lu Yue found that the sky seemed to be a little narrower, and the lake bed plain was a little wider. According to this progress, Lu Yue estimated that he was heading towards the center of the lake bed plain, and the most central position was the location where the Fusang sacred tree first existed. During this time, the three-legged kingfisher flew over Lu Yue many times, and occasionally circled above his head. It was obvious that it was curious about Lu Yue, a human being, and didn't understand why he kept moving forward. Finally, on the 10th day, Lu Yue suddenly stopped, his eyes staring ahead. He could feel a strange breath in front of him, the same breath as the giant mu arrows he had come into contact with before. But for some reason, he could only sense it but couldn't see it with his naked eyes. Lu Yue raised his hand, and the Zuanil spirit shield covered him. He mobilized all his magic power to keep himself in the best condition, and began to continue moving forward. As Lu Yue moved forward, the breath became clearer and clearer, until he encountered an invisible obstacle, and his brows suddenly locked. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 347, Strange Space and Golden Crow Blood. Lu Yue looked at the nothingness in front of him, frowning. He could feel that he was very close to the breath, almost only a hair's breadth away. However, due to the obstacle in front of him, he could not even move forward half a step. Lu Yue naturally understood the situation. There must be a formation protection or a bend in front of him. Lu Yue tapped the obstacle in front of him with one hand, and saw a drop of blue water on his fingertips quickly gathered, and in the blink of an eye, it had gathered to the size of a fist. 1 yuan weak water, breaking the law and breaking the ban, like taking something out of a bag. Lu Yue pushed his finger forward, pushing the water drop on his fingertips forward as well. Lu Yue could feel that the 1 yuan weak water was infiltrating into the invisible barrier in front of him, but the speed was relatively slow. Seeing this, Lu Yue condensed several more water drops and attached them to the barrier in front of him, trying to speed up. Strange, after a while, Lu Yue looked at the water drops still attached to the invisible barrier and couldn't help muttering. He could clearly sense that the barrier in front of him was being penetrated by the one element weak water, but it just didn't penetrate it completely. It felt like the two were engaged in a tug of war, and on the other side of the tug of war, new forces were constantly joining in, causing the progress of the one element weak water to never reach the full value. At this rate, let alone breaking the barrier in front of him, it would be amazing to be able to keep up with the speed of the other side's compensation. After understanding this, Lu Yue waved his hand and dispersed the condensed one-element heavy water. Then Lu Yue tried to use the breaking ban talisman and other means to violently break it, but without exception, all failed. This place is the birthplace of the Fusang sacred tree, and it is also the foundation. It is reasonable that there are magical things. After Lu Yue stopped and thought for a while, he took out the arrow from the stored ring and held it in his hand. This was the last solution he could think of. If the Jianmu arrows of the same origin didn't work, Lu Yue could only sigh and finally go home. However, after the arrow was taken out, Lu Yue could clearly feel that the strange breath in front of him became stronger. The feeling was not that the breath suddenly increased, but it was similar to that his senses became much more acute, and the depth of perception was also strengthened. It worked. Lu Yue held the arrow and reached forward with one hand. As the tip of the arrow slowly sank into the space in front, Lu Yue's eyes also showed a hint of joy. Soon, the entire arrowhead had disappeared in the invisible barrier, and even Lu Yue's right hand partially disappeared in front of him. Lu Yue moved his right hand and found that it was tightly wrapped by a strange and tight feeling. He moved, and his fingers suddenly felt sluggish, but it did not form too many obstacles. So Liu began to stretch his arm forward and gradually went deeper. Finally, Liu's whole body squeezed through the crack opened by the arrow. With a pop, Liu broke free from the suffocating squeeze. As soon as he broke free, Liu was shocked by the scene in front of him. In his field of vision, a stump with almost no edges stood on the ground. The stump was full of irregular cuts. Even though it was still a very long distance away, Liu could sense a mysterious aura emanating from the stump. It was an aura that embraced everything, connected the sky and the earth, and even remained unchanged from ancient times. Liu muttered absent-mindedly, "Fusang Sacred Tree." It was definitely the Fusang Sacred Tree. In the mural, the final outcome of the Fusang Sacred Tree was that the trunk was broken, leaving only the stump, which was exactly the same as what Liu saw at this time. Liu thought that he might encounter something related to the Fusang tree and the golden crow on this trip, but he never thought that he would see the real Fusang Sacred Tree. Holding the arrow tightly, Liu came to his senses and began to observe everything around him. The space where the Fusang Sacred Tree was located seemed to be different from the previous space. Compared with the Tang Valley outside, this place was more like the real Tang Valley, and the air was filled with an ancient and hot breath. After observing for a while, Liu did not find anything and did not sense any danger. So he began to take steps, cautiously heading towards the Fusang Sacred Tree in the distance. At first, he was just walking slowly on the ground. After a while, Liu began to run, then began to fly, and finally turned into a rainbow light and flew rapidly towards the last remaining stump of the Fusang Sacred Tree. As the distance got closer, Liu's eyes became more and more shocked. It was not until he got closer that he understood why the Fusang Sacred Tree was said to be the ladder to the Heavenly Palace. It was truly a terrifying wall that blocked Liu's entire world. It was just a broken stump, but it was still as tall as the clouds, which was chilling. Even if Liu tried his best, he still couldn't see the top of the broken stump, and even the edge of the stump couldn't be seen. However, Liu did discover it. For example, he now saw that on the tree trunk, between the bark that was like a canyon, there seemed to be many nests built by birds. The nests were small and similar to those built by ordinary house sparrows, but the big ones were tens or hundreds of feet long. The largest nest in Liu's field of vision was nearly 200 feet long. It was hard to imagine how big the birds living in such a huge nest were. I'm afraid that even if they were not divine beasts, they were not far away. Just as Liu was shocked, a familiar green rainbow passed by his eyes. The green rainbow crossed the sky, then suddenly turned back, and finally stopped not far in front of Liu. The three-legged kingfisher just hovered in the air, tilted its head and looked at Liu, as if it was a little curious about how Liu got here. Seeing this, Liu showed a harmless smile. Just as he was about to say something to the three-legged kingfisher, he saw that the other side was frightened and appeared 100 feet away from Liu in a flash. Liu's steps stopped in midair, and the smile on his face was also frozen there. Looking at the three-legged kingfisher flying away, he could only give up the idea of communicating with it. Liu walked towards the trunk of the Fusang tree, and when he reached the bottom of the tree stump, he stretched out his hand and knocked on the trunk in front of him, and the trunk immediately made a dull sound. He touched it again, but found that the trunk was extremely hard, as if it was a hole, and there was no possibility of being damaged. This also made Liu have a better understanding of the arrow in his hand. The person who can make such an arrow is definitely not an ordinary person. Liu held the trunk and looked up at the sky. He wanted to go up and take a look, to see where the Fusang Sacred Tree was broken, to see what kind of attack could break such a sacred tree. Just as Liu was about to fly upwards, the sky suddenly darkened. Liu immediately hid in the gullies of the bark, and operated a breath-holding technique to the extreme, trying his best to restrain his own breath, and looked at the sky with shock in his eyes. In the sky, a bird flew across the sky, and its pair of wings that covered the sky and the sun flapped vigorously, raising a terrifying gale, whistling past Liu in the air. Under it, a 10-foot thick, 100-foot long, one-horned dragon snake was struggling hard. Thick lightning bolts spewed out of the dragon snake's mouth and hit the black claws of the bird, but it had no effect at all. Even from such a distance, Liu could feel the destructive power contained in those lightning bolts. If he allowed one of them to hide him, the consequences would be unimaginable. And such a terrifying dragon snake was now like a long worm, humiliated and firmly grasped by the claws of the bird, becoming its prey. Gudong, Liu hid in the valley, looking up at the giant bird that blocked his entire vision, and for no reason thought of Kunpen. I'm afraid that even a divine transformation cultivator can't face this kind of creature head-on, Lu Ya guessed secretly in his heart. This situation also proved to Lu Ya how dangerous this space was. He must not be lax in this mythical place just because of the long time. The terrifying demon bird above came and went quickly. In just 2 breaths, it had disappeared from Lu Ya's sight with its prey. It was not until the other party flew away, and a while later, that Lu Ya flew out of the valley where he was hiding. Looking at the direction where the bird disappeared, Lu Ya was silent for a few breaths, and then silently landed in the valley. In a place full of terrifying birds, it was not appropriate for him, a small giant and cultivator, to show off. In fact, it was a good thing to measure the Fusang sacred tree with his footsteps. Landing in the valley, Lu Ya flew upwards close to the valley. From a distance, he looked like an ant constantly moving on the surface of the tree trunk. No, the contrast between Lu Ya and the sacred tree was not so exaggerated. To be precise, it was a grain of dust moving on the surface of the tree trunk. The first part of the journey was smooth, and Lu Ya did not encounter any life. But after traveling less than 1/10 of the distance, Lu Ya officially broke into the ecosystem of this sacred tree. From time to time, birds would look at Lu Ya with curiosity. Some brave birds even flew close to him. Some even attacked him directly. However, Lu Ya had several magical powers. He could kill one of these attacks that were not strong enough. In addition, during the killing process, Lu Ya found that many birds had some characteristics of the 3-legged golden crow, the most obvious of which were the iconic 3 legs, golden feathers, and extreme speed. Whenever Lu Ya killed a bird with such characteristics, he would extract its blood. In the past 2 days, he had accumulated a small jade bottle of the blood of the golden crow. Although this kind of blood may not even have 1/1000th of the power of the real golden crow, it is undeniable that its value is still ridiculously high. One of the most obvious effects is that as the blood of the golden crow increases, the purity of the blood is extracted, and the deorime from the blood of the golden crow begins to slowly appear. When the concentration of the deorime is sufficient, Lu Ya can comprehend it. Most of the deorimes in the blood of the golden crow are related to the magic that Lu Ya has practiced. Comprehending the deorimes of the blood of the golden crow will definitely bring Lu Ya considerable benefits. After putting away the jade bottle, Lu Ya continued to move upward. He estimated that it would take 3 to 5 days to reach the top of the Fusang tree stump if everything went well. If things didn't go well, it would take 10 days or half a month. Lu Ya was ready for a protracted battle. He understood that this trip to the cave might be the most precious opportunity he had encountered in his practice so far. Seizing this opportunity would bring great benefits and convenience to the path he would need to take in the future. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 348 Top of the Fusang Tree Stump. 5 days passed in a flash, and the stump of the Fusang sacred tree was like an eternal sacred mountain that stretched between heaven and earth, with countless tiny black dots moving in and out of it. At this moment, amidst the white clouds, Lu Ya was climbing up carefully. In the past 5 days, he had already climbed from the bottom to more than half of the way. As his position rose, the strength of the birds he encountered became more and more terrifying. Fortunately, as the position rose, the number of birds also decreased. Overall, the pressure was lower than the previous 2 days. And as Lu Ya continued to climb, he could clearly feel that at the top, which was not far away, there was a breath that was sometimes huge and sometimes weak. All birds were eager to build nests and practice near the top, so the higher they went, the more fighting between birds and monsters Lu Ya saw. Among them was the terrifying bird he had seen before, whose wingspan covered the sky and fed on dragons and snakes. At that time, it was fighting with another bird of similar size in the sky. The collision of the 2 birds was like the collision of 2 mountains. Every collision made a loud noise that shook the earth. The cry that pierced gold and cracked rocks even pierced Lu Ya's eardrums from a long distance. After seeing this kind of battle, Lu Ya became more careful. Half a day ago, he had completely concealed his own aura. When he encountered monsters that came to attack, he mostly avoided and forced them to retreat, so as not to attract more attention from birds because of the fluctuations of fighting. However, even so, Lu Ya still experienced a lot of battles. Here, the strength of the birds he encountered was generally at the 3rd level. In other words, each of them had the strength of a monster king. This was also because Lu Ya had a strong foundation. If someone else came here, I am afraid that they would have retreated in the endless offensive, or even died on the spot. As he walked, Lu Ya's face suddenly changed, and his figure suddenly drilled into a tree hole under him. Just a few breaths after he entered, a huge bird had broken through the clouds from below, and its body was close to the tree trunk and soared into the sky. During the flight, the strong wind it brought scraped across the bark of the tree like a steel knife, and large pieces of debris mixed with sparks from friction, forming a raging fire, which rushed into the sky behind the bird. Liu was hiding in the tree hole. He heard a boom and his vision went black first, and then suddenly turned into dazzling red light. The next moment, violent flames rushed into the sky, flooding the place where the bird flew over and the cave where Liu was hiding. The terrifying temperature almost instantly baked the tree hole where Liu was hiding into red, almost forming a vacuum. Liu, who was in it, reacted very quickly, and the mana in his body rumbled. He waved his hands one after another, and a large piece of 1 yuan weak water appeared out of thin air, wrapping himself in the 1 yuan weak water, forming a dark blue water ball. The flame was like a dragon, and the water ball was like a bead. The dark blue water ball kept shrinking under the licking of the fire dragon, and was constantly filled by the source inside, always maintaining a size of about 10 feet. Soon, the flame disappeared, and the dark blue water ball followed closely behind. It lost Liu's control and fell below. It collided with the still red surface of the tree hole, and immediately formed billowing steam, which kept gushing out. The steam dissipated, and Liu appeared in the tree hole unscathed. Wiping off a non-existent cold sweat, Liu was still a little scared. If he hadn't discovered it in time, and there was such a tree hole under him to hide, otherwise he would be exposed to the fierce wind and flames brought by this terrifying monster bird. Not to mention that he was just a golden elixir, even a unyielding cultivator would probably be reduced to ashes under this attack. Suddenly, Liu's eyes lit up, and he walked out of the cave quickly and looked up. A charred mark with a width of more than 1,000 feet spread from the bottom of the tree stump all the way up. Wherever the charred mark passed, whether it was a bird's nest or a flying bird, it was all burned. Liu looked up, and the white clouds above were dispersed by the previous terrifying monster bird, revealing the azure sky and the line at the limit of his vision. That was where the tree stump broke, which was also the top of the Fusang sacred tree. Good opportunity. Liu looked at the charred mark without any obstruction, and knew in his heart that this might be his fastest chance to reach the top. So he didn't stop, jumped out of the tree hole, turned into a rainbow light, and rushed to the top at full speed, chasing the blazing fire above. Originally, it would take at least 5 days to travel at the previous speed. With Liu running at full speed and without any interference, it only took half an hour to reach the top. As the peak got closer and closer, the huge monster bird suddenly let out a cry, and suddenly flashed its wings, rushing away from the tree trunk and toward the sky. It looked as if there was some terrifying existence on the top of the peak, which made it afraid to approach. Seeing this, Liu was delighted. He had been thinking about how he would get past a demon bird if it stopped near the top of the peak, but he didn't expect it to leave the tree trunk. Taking this opportunity, Liu used the wind escape in succession and successfully rushed to the top of the peak. Landing on a flat surface, Liu looked at the canyon-like crack in front of him and the many wood stumps at the crack. He was awed and even more afraid of the godlike and demon-like existence that broke the Fusang sacred tree. Liu looked into the distance, and the breath that was sometimes strong and sometimes weak appeared clearly in his perception as he reached the top. Without hesitation, Liu rushed to the center of the stump in front again. Without the obstruction of the demon bird, his speed was extremely fast. Despite this, it still took Liu more than an hour to reach the center of the Fusang sacred tree stump. This shows how huge this Fusang sacred tree is and how magnificent it was before it was broken. Step. Liu landed lightly on the stump with a smooth cross-section. In front of him, a bowl-shaped shape as big as a mountain formed in the middle of the broken stump, holding a ball of light that was sometimes dark and sometimes golden red. The breath was emitted from the ball of light. As if it had sensed the presence of a living being, the ball of light suddenly began to tremble violently, as if something was about to break out of its shell. At the same time, the dark light on the ball of light became stronger, suppressing the golden red light to the point that it almost disappeared. The next moment, a violent crow cry resounded through the sky, and endless might erupted on the ball of light. Liu narrowed his eyes slightly, and the Zuanil spirit shield was violently shaken by the impact. The next moment, a pair of wings burning with black and gold flames suddenly spread out from the ball of light, standing in front of Liu like a gate to heaven, and then a proud head covered with the black and gold feathers rushed out from the ball of light. Liu was infected with hand, foot and mouth disease by her son. Now her feet are covered with herpes. It hurts so much when her feet touch the ground. Herpes has also started to appear on her hands. Fortunately, she can still type. What a sin. Chapter 349 Demonized Golden Crow. In Luya's narrowed eyes, the ball of light as big as a mountain suddenly transformed into a half-solid golden crow with black and gold flames burning all over its body, 3 legs under its body, and 3 eyes on its head. The golden crow lowered its head, and the vertical pupil on its forehead was as black as ink. A terrifying and twisted aura was emanating from it, suppressing the golden light in the 2 normal eyes on the side to the point where it was almost invisible. Luya was stared at by this suddenly appearing golden crow, as if he was cast into a spell of immobilization. His whole body was stiff in place, motionless. The threat of death was tearing at Luya's nerves crazily, desperately urging Luya to leave here quickly and disappear in front of this black golden crow forever. Perhaps it was just hatched, and this black golden crow with a terrifying and twisted aura did not attack Luya immediately. Instead, it was quite leisurely combing its feathers, sometimes moving its wings, and sometimes probing its claws. The magic power in Luya's body kept attacking his imprisoned body, and at the same time, his mind was racing. This golden crow looked like a semi-solid existence, not like a physical body. It should be a soul, or more precisely, a remnant soul. Judging from its appearance and the aura emanating from its body, it was definitely not the orthodox golden crow soul. Combined with the dark and golden light before, a guess quickly emerged in Luya's mind. For some reason, this remnant soul of the golden crow was retained on the Fusang sacred tree, but it was polluted and demonized by the aura emanating from the terrifying divine and demonic existence, and finally created such a demonized golden crow with black flames burning all over its body. So how should we deal with such a demonized golden crow? The momentum alone shocked Luya and made him unable to move. Luya did not think that the other party was a paper tiger, but just had a terrifying aura. At this moment, Luya suddenly found that the demonized golden crow on the opposite side was stagnant, and the golden light in his eyes suddenly lit up, but it only lit up for less than a breath, and was suppressed by the thick darkness. It seems that the original golden crow remnant soul is still fighting with this polluted part for control of the body. In this way, Luya seemed to have a solution. Just after the demonized golden crow regained control of its body, the murderous intent in its vertical pupils suddenly surged, and one of its wings slowly raised. In Luya's eyes, it was as if a heavenly sword was slowly unsheathed, and a thick black flame was burning on the heavenly sword. The next moment, the sky darkened, and the huge heavenly sword slashed down in an instant. Hundreds of tiny arcs burst out from Luya's body, tearing off the invisible restraints on his body. At the moment before the heavenly sword descended, his figure dissipated with a gust of wind and appeared 30 feet away. Chi. As the dark sword light flashed, a sword key gully of 100 feet long suddenly appeared on the stump of the extremely solid Fusang sacred tree, and a thick black flame was burning wantonly in the gully. Luya's heart was chilled. If he had been a little slower just now, he would have been beheaded at this moment. Before he could catch his breath, the demonized golden crow, which had missed the first strike, once again showed violent anger in its vertical pupils. It turned its wings and slashed down vertically, and swept towards Luya's position as fast as lightning. With one move, it swept through thousands of troops, and a sharp sword energy was the first to come to him. Luya did not pause, and had to use the wind escape again to barely avoid this horizontal slash. Then, before the demonized golden crow could attack again, Luya's figure flashed again and appeared outside the wingspan of the demonized golden crow. Looking at the demonized golden crow that was 100 feet taller, Luya's sword ring flashed, and several jade bottles appeared in front of him. At the same time, the arrow also appeared in his palm. He moved his magic power slightly, and several jade bottles in front of him burst one after another, revealing the golden-red golden crow's blood. As soon as the golden crow's blood appeared, Luya saw the huge demonized golden crow pause again, and the original golden crow's eyes lit up with golden light. At the same time, a divine thought suddenly appeared in Luya's mind. Blood, give me the arrow nail. Vertical pupil. The divine thought was intermittent, but the expression was clear, so Luya understood the other party's meaning without much effort. The golden crow's residual soul needed the golden crow's blood, and asked him to nail this arrow on the vertical pupil on his head. But it was obvious that at such a long distance, neither goal could be achieved. Seeing this, Lu Ye gathered several balls of golden crow's blood into a blood ball the size of a human head, and then wrapped this blood ball, instead of retreating, rushed towards the direction of the demonized golden crow. Seeing that Lu Ye still had the courage to come back, and still holding the golden crow's blood that it hated the most in its hand, the demonized golden crow let out a fierce cry, and a crow claw stretched out as fast as lightning, grabbing towards Lu Ye. As the claw stretched out, Lu Ye felt that the surrounding space seemed to be solidified, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not break through the space blockade that had turned into substance. At this moment, another crow claw also stretched out as fast as lightning, knocking the crow claw that was grabbing Lu Ye aside. Another violent and angry cry sounded. Lu Ye ignored it and let the golden crow's residual soul and the demonized soul fight for control of his body, while he quickly rushed towards the demonized golden crow's body. Under the interference of the golden crow's residual soul, Lu Ye arrived under the golden crow without any danger. As if sensing the danger, the dark flames on the demonized golden crow's body suddenly surged, as if it wanted to burn Lu Ye to death with this terrifying demonic flame, or at least stop him several feet away from its body. However, the next moment, pure golden red flames rose from the pitch-black demonic flames, with a most rigid and masculine domineering, dispelling the surrounding dark demonic flames and rushing straight towards the golden crow's body. Go! Lu Ye took advantage of the sudden burst of the sun's true fire and quickly rushed forward several feet, completely crossing the barrier between the two. The next moment, he pressed the golden crow's blood in his hand hard on the golden crow's body. As soon as the blood of the golden crow entered the body of the demonized golden crow, it immediately turned into dense blood-colored threads, spreading like a network of veins to the entire body of the golden crow. In just a short moment, a blood-colored cocoon-like blockade was built on the half-solidified body of the demonized golden crow. As the blockade was formed, the flames on the body of the demonized golden crow gradually subsided, and its movements became slower and slower. Lu Ye's eyes showed joy, and then he did not dare to neglect it at all. He rose from the ground and rushed directly to the top of the demonized golden crow's head. As he rushed forward, his magic power condensed, and a long bow with rich spiritual energy appeared in his hand. He drew his bow and put an arrow on it. Lu Ye's consciousness firmly locked onto the vertical pupil on the top of the demonized golden crow's head. At the same time, the demonized soul, which sensed the threat, began to struggle, and its head began to swing violently, while the original golden crow soul tried its best to stabilize its head, creating the best opportunity for Lu Ye. Until a certain moment, Lu Ye's eyes flashed. It's now. What a sin, my feet are getting more and more swollen and painful. Everyone, remember to vote. Chapter 350, Golden Crow Transformation into Rainbow. The Jianmu arrow exuded a majestic aura, turning into a stream of light that was invisible to the naked eye, as if penetrating space, and appeared in front of the demonized golden crow's vertical pupil in the next moment. Puff! Without any obstruction, the arrow completely sank into the opening and closing vertical pupil. A scream came from the mouth of the demonized golden crow. The Jianmu arrow burst out a burst of clear light, as if it sealed the entire vertical pupil in it. As the clear light spread, the originally bulging vertical pupil was slowly forced to close, and finally closed completely. On the huge body of the golden crow, the dark magic fire quickly extinguished. Seeing this, Lu Ye breathed a sigh of relief. Wow! A crisp sound of wings spreading rang out, and Lu Ye saw the three-legged golden crow in front of him suddenly spread its wings, stretched its body, raised its head, and let out a majestic and loud cry. Until the cry ended, the three-legged golden crow with golden eyes retracted its wings and lowered its head to look at Lu Ye in front of him. Lu Ye also looked up at the legendary beast, wondering if he could communicate now. Thank you. Just as Lu Ye was guessing, a majestic and crisp voice sounded in his mind. Before Lu Ye could reply, the voice in his mind sounded again. My name is Yaowen. If it weren't for you, I don't know how long I would have been in a daze. Yaowen. Lu Ye thought about his words in his mind before he said, I also found this place by chance. If it weren't for the help of the senior's divine thoughts, I'm afraid I wouldn't have escaped the disaster just now. Jinwu Yaowen shook his head, and his divine thoughts came again. You don't have to be modest for saving my life. I just saw the true fire you summoned. It seems, the divine thoughts came here, but hesitated a little. Lu Ye did not hide it, and summoned a ball of fire again, making it float quietly in front of him. Feeling the all too familiar flame, Jinwu Yaowen's huge body trembled, and even his mind trembled. He lowered his head and gently touched the Sun True Fire in front of Lu Ya with his beak, and said slowly, "It is indeed the Sun True Fire of my clan." After that, he turned his head and looked at Lu Ya. "If it weren't for the pure human blood flowing in your body, I would have thought that you and I were of the same clan." Lu Ya smiled faintly and said, "Senior, you are joking. I am indeed a human. This true fire is also obtained through my diligent practice. As for why the Sun True Fire was born, I don't know. There are always special things in the world. Speaking of which, if I were not a soul, I could use my own true fire to stimulate your true fire, and thus make your Sun True Fire reach a higher level. But now I can only give up," Jinwu Yawen said with a little regret. Lu Ya heard this and did not get too entangled, but heard Jinwu Yawen say again, "Since you can reach this place, you should have seen the murals before, and you should have some understanding of what happened to this world." Lu Ya nodded, "Although I have some understanding, it is limited." "Why did this world become what it is now?" Jinwu Yawen sighed slightly. "Then you should know about the fusang fruit, right? Everything is caused by it." Lu Ya was silent. "The principle of an innocent man being guilty of possessing a treasure is simple. What's more, it is a treasure of the great Dao that contains the great Dao." Jinwu Yawen said again, "The demon king who seized the fusang fruit was unable to compete with us in our prime. In the battle, Tangu was destroyed, the mother tree was broken, and all my brothers and sisters died. Only I still have a trace of my soul and survived until now. My condolences." Lu Ya was silent again. "Okay, let's not talk about this. The fusang fruit has been taken away. Speaking of which, I remembered a magical inheritance that you might like." Jinwu Yawen shook its wings and looked at Lu Ya and said. Lu Ya was attracted by its words and couldn't help but look at it. Jinwu Yawen simply shook its wings, and its huge body suddenly turned into golden light and disappeared in front of Lu Ya. The next moment, its body reappeared in the same place, as if it had never moved. Chirp, however, at this moment, in front of it, an emerald green three-legged bird was imprisoned there, making a terrified cry. Lu Ya was shocked. He had experienced the speed of this three-legged kingfisher and could not catch up with it at all. Unexpectedly, he was caught in front of Jinwu Yawen in an instant. "You have mastered the Sun's True Fire, but I noticed that you are a little slow. I will teach you the Golden Crow clan's innate magical power, the Golden Crow transformation into rainbow. As for how much you can comprehend, it depends on your personal understanding." Lu Ya was very surprised when he heard this. If he could learn the Golden Crow transformation into rainbow, his life would be guaranteed in the future. Go! The Golden Crow young one spread its wings, and the three-legged kingfisher in front of it suddenly lost its restraints and turned into a rainbow light and rushed straight to Lu Ya's forehead. Before Lu Ya could react, the rainbow light had already penetrated into his forehead. Wow! In just a moment, Lu Ya saw countless golden crows flapping their wings and passing by him at a high speed, and a wisp of enlightenment began to spread in his heart. He slowly sat down cross-legged and tried his best to comprehend this mysterious and unusual Golden Crow transformation into rainbow. Seeing that Lu Ya had entered into a state of concentration, Jinwu Yawen's eyes flashed with satisfaction, and then it made up its mind. The golden light in its eyes was bright, and a bright light spot like the scorching sun gradually rose from its body and was finally spit out. As soon as the light spot appeared, it emitted a strong light like the scorching sun, which almost blinded people. When the light faded, it was found that it was not a light spot at all, but a drop of blood with a bright golden light. The life essence blood of the Jinwu clan, one of the last three, is worth it to use it to repay the life-saving grace. Jinwu Yawen sighed, and then saw the drop of life essence blood slowly flying to the top of Lu Ya's head and entering his body from the top of his head. After the life essence blood was completely immersed in Lu Ya's body, it immediately turned into countless golden lights, reflecting Lu Ya's body in a golden and red color. It was vaguely seen that the golden light was moving rapidly in Lu Ya's body. As time went by, a little bit of mysterious lines gradually formed under Lu Ya's body surface, and as time went by, the golden light slowly settled in the lines. After an unknown amount of time, when the lines were completely formed, Lu Ya finally woke up from his perception. As soon as he woke up, he couldn't help but show joy in his eyes, and then looked at the golden light on his body with some astonishment. "Senior, what is this?" "This is the lifeblood of my clan. Without it, how can you comprehend the lifeblood magic of the Jinwu clan?" Jinwu Yawen explained. "Thank you, Senior." Lu Ya stood up and bowed to Jinwu Yawen. Essence and blood are extremely important to anyone, not to mention Jinwu Yawen's current state. The impact of a drop of essence in blood is not small. Jin Wuyawen said, well, it's not easy to regain consciousness this time. The evil thoughts in my body are contaminated by the remaining breath of the Demon King. If you are fine, leave early, Lu Yang asked tentatively. Senior, is there any way? If there is a way, you wouldn't have entangled me for so long. Jin Wuyawen seemed to smile, and then it looked up at the sky. I really hope to see the mother tree again, and see my brothers and sisters again. The fever has subsided, and it's better. Everyone, remember to vote. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.